Everyone. Welcome participants to the joint hybrid planning board meeting of July 24th. Call to order, Ms. Creighton.
Here.
Ms. Felicio.
Here.
Ms. Foley.
Here.
Mr. Only. Here. Ms. Philbrick.
Here.
Ms. Kenny.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Full quorum tonight. I'd like to remind all board members, guests are asked to be recognized by the chair if you wish to speak, and this meeting is being recorded. Gail won't be joining us tonight. But first item on the agenda, acknowledge receipt of correspondence. Gail entered public hearing notice for Wenham, decision Beverly, emails from Helen Bethel and MIPA, and then late an email from Donna First that I put in our packet. At this time, I will allow any public comments on items not on the agenda with a limited amount of time. Anybody from the public wish to speak? Please do so by raising your hand. Okay, no public speaking. The next item is the Downtown Improvement Committee presentation. The slides were put in your meeting packet. And I'd like to introduce Steve Carhart of the Downtown Improvement Committee to give us a presentation.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your interest in what we're up to. As most of you know, the Downtown Improvement Committee is appointed by the Select Board. Our history goes back to the original Downtown Improvement Project in 2008. As time has evolved, the Select Board has asked us to get involved with various matters of policy as well as hardware and infrastructure. Most recently, in addition to the project I'm going to show you tonight, we've been involved with your work as well on downtown parking. We're also involved in the coastal resilience activity and the MBTA zoning project. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Gordon Brewster and Kurt Spitaka, who have been our two lead citizen volunteers on this project. Gordon, as you know, is a professional engineer, deeply involved in the rehab of the schools, among other things. And Kurt is a longtime member of Bikes and Ped and has kept that point of view in front of us as we go through this. The project we're here to present has been at this level of detail. We've been working on the planning for a couple of years, including a lot of time walking around the town with the professional support of DPW and VHB, whom you'll see later. I do have a couple of slides that I just want to offer as a citizen's introduction to the project. Sarah, can you give me the first one?
Yeah, I'm just making, I got
Sure.
Also, Chris has been our liaison, right?
Oh, yes. I mean, I should mention Chris has been there, and Betsy and her predecessor, Sue, always come to our meetings, and our regular meeting is the third Wednesday of the month at 8:30 a.m. and come one, come all.
Yeah, see me.
Oh, here you are.
Sorry, I got kicked out of the.
Oh,
Cool. All right. Okay. Very hard to do this when you only have one screen.
Yeah, do both. Yeah,
Great, thank you so much.
Let me just get rid of some.
Point out. No, it was a 1.0.
There was a one, yeah, absolutely. Could you give me the next one there? Is that? Great. Okay, this is our mandate from the Select Board. So the area that we're concerned about here is from Pine and Central here through downtown, over to Beach, out to Tappan Street, and then up Summer Street. So those are the areas where we're charged to pay attention and develop good projects. The phase 1.0 is the area that you see in orange there, which was done and finished in 2008. I would encourage anybody to take a close look at that and see how well the durability of the work that was done there and the quality of the design, and how that has held up since then, which I think is a testament to folks who were on the committee before we were. Next slide, please. No, that one? Yeah, there we go. No. This is our secret master plan for downtown Manchester. We would like to call it ridiculous and maintain this historic look and feel and modern functionality. Now, we're not going to get all the way there, but this is kind of the picture in back of many of our minds that we're sort of moving towards and that we're thinking about as we're going forward. Now, sadly, that kind of look and feel and quality of maintenance is not the reality. And the motivation for this project is we have taken a very critical look at what the reality of Manchester's downtown infrastructure is compared to what we would like to see. So the next few slides give you some pictures of what we are concerned about. And a lot of these things we kind of look over because we live here and that's how it always has been and so forth. And we're used to it. But if we look at it from a critical point of view and say, is this the kind of a place that a business would want to come to, that want to say that this town really cares about its downtown, that it's a high quality place to do business, or people that would want to come and at some subconscious level, are they going to see a place that is inviting and looks well maintained and is generally high quality? These are the kinds of things we're trying to get at. So there's too much of our downtown which has uneven, poorly repaired bituminous sidewalk. Many of you may walk down Central Street, take a close look underneath, or the absence of curbs altogether, or haphazard bituminous curbs rather than high quality granite curbs that we're proposing to put in across downtown. Next slide, please. We also note that the introduction of modern amenities has been haphazard. And if you take a critical look at it, it really doesn't fit with the image that we would like to have in a historic district. These look like they're escaped from a 1950s horror movie. We would like to extend the historically correct lamps that were put in the downtown phase 1. Similarly, haphazardly installed overhead wires rather than undergrounding. We should mention that DPW warns us that actually undergrounding them involves negotiations with utilities and may be very complicated. But for starters, we wanted to underground anything in the downtown area. Next slide, please. The other thing that we paid a lot of attention to is pedestrian and bike availability and safety. There's not a lot of room downtown, but we've gone to great lengths to try to get the best possible compromises in place for all users, so that we have safety and mobility and accessibility for people as much as we can without radically changing the picture of downtown. So this is just one example where there is no crosswalk between Pine Street and Elm Street. That's one example of where we're going to put in a fresh crosswalk. Similarly, on the aesthetics and general amenities at the edge of the downtown infrastructure, there are a number of places where the railings are simply aging and ugly, and where we can use some more street trees. So those are the kinds of things that we're concerned about. I should mention at this point that these kinds of things are entirely compatible with the civic space work, which has been briefed to us, and many of our members have been out in the field with civic space, and they sort of just meld in with what we have here for the hardware and the infrastructure. Next slide, please. So just to sum up, what we're talking about here is consistent, high quality sidewalks, curbing, and lighting. We believe that this will, since it is downtown, it is the heaviest use area and the most visible area, it is worth installing high quality cement and sidewalks and granite curbs, which will reduce the cost of patchwork repairs. We're concerned, as we said, about safety and usability. We would call attention to the fact that everyone is concerned about the advantage of having businesses in the limited commercial district, and that's fine. Our charge is to be paying attention to our existing commercial district. We want to have a place that's inviting for customers and new businesses alike. I mentioned the historic concern that we have. And the last thing I've mentioned is that we want to integrate this with the other downtown public works, as has been done with the complete streets work earlier and will be done with culvert work. And so the idea here is that every time, we may not do all this at once, but the idea is that every time we do something downtown, we have this in the back of our mind so that it's all integrated work as it gets completed. So with that, I'll turn it over to our professionals, Chuck Dam and VHB, who will explain this very professional, detailed work that has gone into implementing these general objectives.
Thanks, Steve. This is Chuck. I guess I'll hand it over to Elsa, who's our consultant with VHB, who
Great.
gave a presentation. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and so I think she'd be the one to walk us through the project as she did a couple weeks ago with the select board, and I think pretty much speaks for itself, but obviously we'll stick around and take questions afterwards. I'm not sure who's in control of the screen, but Elsa Chan is the consultant with VHB that is on the call tonight. So if we could let her share her screen, I think she'll be able to walk us through it.
All right.
What's the name?
Elsa Chan.
Okay, hold on. Hey, Elsa, you're muted, but you're a co-host. You can put up your.
All right, thank you.
Are your slides in this, or do I stop sharing?
Stop sharing.
Okay,
She's
great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry. Just need to see which one I'm sharing.
While they're waiting, I'm pretty sure the genesis of the downtown improvement project was with the planning board back many years ago. There was a consultant, and the work then spun out to a subcommittee, but whatever it's worth.
Okay, can everyone see the slides?
Not yet. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you, everyone. I think Steve pretty much did half of my presentation here already. He did a good job in explaining, what the project objectives are, and some of the stuff that we're trying to accomplish here as part of the phase 2 project here. Just kind of, looking back, Steve already covered this project limits. We're looking at, taking the end of the project limit from phase 1, from Central Street, from Pine Street to Town Hall, and then Union Street between School Street and Union Street, Beach Street, and then Summer Street, just, east of where the project limits are from phase 1, and also along Beach Street as well. So part of a couple of the tasks and scope that we have is to kind of solicit feedback from, what you guys liked, what you guys didn't like about the phase 1 improvements, to understand, what you guys are concerned about. A couple of things that we heard is to retain the existing parking counts within the downtown area, to improve safety and connectivity, to improve the aesthetics, to use durable materials as well, for the phase 2 portion of this project. So, the first task we did was to identify existing conditions. We did a site walk to understand, the existing sidewalk conditions and gaps there are out there regarding pedestrian connectivity, some of the desire lines, the existing street lighting out there and streetscape, and also the existing on-street parking situation and restrictions as well. And then we incorporated feedback from the DIPS committee based on the site visit and some preliminary conceptual design, and then we kind of come up with the concept that we're presenting here for the phase 2 roadway, streetscape, and mobility improvements. So Steve already kind of went over all these issues regarding the project limits, but I'll just quickly kind of, glide through these. Couple of the things that, along Central Street is that there's pedestrian safety issues, especially at the Elm Street intersection there. Visibility of pedestrians are tough because of the cars that are parked pretty close to the crosswalk. And then there's a lack of connectivity, pedestrian connectivity, because of the distance between the crossing at Elm Street. And then the next one is at Bridge Street. And then, there's also a pinch point, right where number 2 is on the screen here. The sidewalk itself, it's pretty narrow. So it's an accessibility, and also, it kind of makes it challenging for pedestrians as well along the sidewalk. And lastly, as Steve mentioned, there are some utilities that would be nice to be underground for aesthetics purposes here. And then moving down to Union Street, right outside the library, based on our understanding that, the tree, where there was a tree before and they pulled it out there. So there's this awkward bump out that's located right in front of the library right now. And then moving down to the crosswalk there's accessibility issues. The curb ramps are not accessible. And then on the right side there, the picture is showing that, because of the parking that's along this portion of Union Street, a lot of times, the vehicles have to cross over the center line, which creates a safety issue here as far as, people straddling across to the other side of the roadway just to bypass the parking here. And then along Beach Street, as you can see, there's pedestrian, some of the identified issues is the pedestrian connectivity and wayfinding issues. And then the fence itself along Beach Street right there, it's also kind of antiquated and old and, not the prettiest looking there. And then the pedestrian safety right outside Captain Dusty's there, especially during the summer months, it's pretty popular. So improving pedestrian safety at that location. And then the fourth one right at Tappan Street, the crosswalk, as you can see here, there's no curb ramps. It just literally run into the curb. Accessibility is an issue at this location. And then along Summer Street, the C Street at Washington Street intersection, that's, there's some challenging operations and safety here, especially, from C Street. It's kind of hard to see people who are coming southbound from southbound Summer Street there. And then there's no formalized parking, even though there's, 2-hour parking along this stretch of Summer Street. There's no formalized parking, so it doesn't look very inviting as well for visitors to come up here into this section to park. And then lastly, the guardrail and railing that's alongside this stretch of Summer Street, it's substandard as well. So we kind of talked to the DIPS committee to understand the extent of improvements that we want to see under phase 2. Some of the stuff that, we definitely want to kind of echo with what phase 1 had is to upgrade the sidewalks to cement concrete, definitely upgrading the curb ramps to be ADA compliant. However, we want to keep the curb lines as it is, no significant roadway construction, and then better define parking and improving crosswalks and crossings along the project limit corridors as well. And then, the one thing is, if we do have to reconstruct curb lines, it'll be more towards, improving pedestrian safety. So as far as study area-wide improvements, as I mentioned earlier, there will be new sidewalks and curb reset along the corridors, the project limits. And then the pedestrian and street lights will also be upgraded as part of this downtown improvement phase 2, upgrading the accessibility at sidewalks and crosswalks. However, we do want to maintain the existing pavement width and also the existing parking within the study area, and also improving the landscape at the sidewalk along Beach Street there, and also at the park edge. So for this stretch of Central Street, this is the concept plan for this this section of the Central Street project limits. As you can see here, the yellow shows, brand new sidewalks, brand new concrete sidewalks. There's a pedestrian crossing that's provided between Pine Street and Elm Street, just west of Morse Court there. All the ADA curb ramps will be upgraded. The crosswalk at Elm Street, that probably will be tied to the culvert project instead of this phase 2, because that project is coming first. And then to eliminate and alleviate the pinch point where I was talking about earlier along the sidewalk on the south side, we were able to kind of shift the roadway a slight bit just to kind of steal a little space to increase the sidewalk width at that location. And then lastly, you know, that's for the utility to go underground. That's more of a longer term improvement. And then for Union Street, that's between School Street and Beach Street. In this section of Union Street, we're proposing, once again, brand new concrete sidewalks, some upgrade of the lighting. There will be curb realignment in front of the library. That bump out will kind of flush it out there, realigning the curb so that, you know, it's flushed. And then this can create a few parking spaces right outside the library. And then the crosswalk right there as well, right in the middle. Curb extensions will also be provided on the south side to shorten the pedestrian crossing. The curb ramps all will be upgraded to meet current ADA standards. And then on the eastern end of this Union Street here, where I was talking about earlier, where vehicles, you know, sometimes kind of cross over to the center line, we'll formalize parking just to make sure that, you know, they're parked in the spaces that provides enough travel way for the through vehicles. So this kind of shows a cross section of what the existing condition on the left looks like and what it will look like in the proposed condition. As you can see, the bump out is gone in front of the library. Some parking spaces are available there. The curb extension on the south side that's showing here will shorten the crossing here at this crosswalk. And then down to Beach Street. So along Beach Street, as you can see here, the existing fencing will be upgraded to decorative brick railing, new concrete sidewalk. Will also provide a grass or paver buffer just adjacent to the sidewalks. The curb, the right outside Captain Dusty's, there's a raised table that's being proposed, and this, aside from, you know, increasing visibility of pedestrians, it also serve as a traffic calming measure to kind of lower their speeds along this stretch of Beach Street. And lastly, all the curb ramps and the crossings will all be upgraded or constructed to be accessible. And then this kind of shows where outside of Captain Dusty on the left side is the existing condition, and then on the right side is the proposed speed table that we're proposing at this location here. This one is kind of added in afterwards. This is right outside the post office. You might kind of, you know, not see it as well here, but on the left side is the existing condition. It was kind of, you know, brought up that the space right in front of that circle there, it's kind of hard to back in because of the angle of the curb over there. So we had proposed to kind of cut it back a little bit, where you can see on the right side, it's like cut in kind of half of the car there, just to make it easier for someone to back into that spot. And then along Summer Street, some of the design elements that we've incorporated into this conceptual plan is to upgrade the existing guardrail so that it meets current standard, and also formalize the parking spaces, especially, and also, you know, providing some wayfinding here so that, you know, visitors can also know that there are spaces to park along this stretch of Summer Street. And also there are some utilities here that also would be good to be undergrounding these utilities. But once again, these are more of the long-term improvement for the utility and also require coordination as well. So it's a cross section that you can see here on the left is the existing addition. On the right side, as you can see, there's some street ornamental street light, some formalized parking spots as well, the bridge railing that's been upgraded, and then concrete sidewalks along both sides to tie into the phase 1 project limit. And then that's it.
So this is what our committee has been working on, and we have, after a lot of working on with our professional colleagues on compromises and trade-offs that we thought were optimal, we're recommending that to our elected leadership.
Good. The proposed lighting, is it similar to what's in town now?
It is, it will be an updated there have been some technical problems and improvements that would be have been identified with the exact fixtures that we had before, so that will be updated, but it will be visually the same.
So Ron, may I speak to?
A lot of them were blown out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the intent is to provide consistent design through, all the way through the staff of all the design aspects of it, be it curb line, be it concrete sidewalk, be it the lighting features, being a little more consistency. And one thing that I know that's on Kurt's mind, in my mind too, we try to provide a consistent, clear path for traffic as it travels all the way from the Beverly Farm side, all the way through the town and exiting towards Gloucester. So this doesn't go narrow and wide, narrow and wide. We would create a simple painted line on the side of the road so that you know where your travel lane is, so you don't feel like you can wander around. Hopefully that'll control speed and give people a little better directions to how to move. Another thing too that Steve pointed out before is that parking is a little bit vague in some places here. The intent of this is also to better define the parking spaces so that we don't have the cars just parking wherever they want to. This will be a better, like widening the curb at the right in front of the library will now define. We gained a couple spaces here and there, lost one, a couple here and there, but we gained a few along the way. So I think it'd be better for us as citizens, and also for patrons who want to frequent the merchants in downtown. So I think it's gone a long way for that.
And bicyclists.
And bicycles.
Yeah, and I think that's what Gordon said, putting the fog lines along the side of the road, so it defines how wide your travel lane is, like out here. In front of the restaurant across the street, the road is so wide that people tend to drive too fast, but if you had fog lines all the way through town, it kind of
Yeah.
narrows your focus down. I gotta keep between these lines, and even though there's not enough room for bicycle lanes everywhere, at least it kind of sets a little bit of a tone. Just leave a little space.
Right, I'll take board questions, Laura.
Yeah, there's a lot here to respond to, and I'm really glad that we're thinking about our downtown and the pedestrian and bicycle access. This plan feels to me like mostly compromise, it could benefit from more aspiration. I think it's the cars and the people are sort of at a tug of war in this, and I feel that the cars are mostly winning. So, and against the pedestrians and the bicyclists, when I look back at the 2008 plans that were done, I think that's really great work. There's really nice materials with the granite crossings and the granite walls and granite curbing and concrete materials. So there was a lot of thought put into the materials and the kind of alignment there. And so, just as an example, when we're talking about nibbling away at that granite bump out to make it easier to park, I don't think that's the right solution here. I think we got to put the people first if we're doing sidewalk improvements. So I heard accessibility at the curb ramps, but I didn't hear anything about accessibility of the sidewalk widths. If we're going to spend all of this money on new concrete and granite curbs, that's great. We should be doing that, but we should take that opportunity before we excavate for curbs to look at what's the right alignment of the road itself. And to regularize it, I think that's right. But let's at that same time take the opportunity to make the sidewalks wider where we can. We really can't walk two people abreast, and certainly for accessibility. I mean, I saw in a number of those photos where we're talking about not moving curbs. We got a light pole in the way, we got a former tree pit in the way, we've got various infrastructure that necks it down so much that to get a wheelchair or a walker down is next to impossible. And when I look at the school, I know there was a lot of talk and a lot of opinions about the School Street intersection and what happened there. And unfortunately, I feel like that was a missed opportunity because it's so wide now that it's confusing for vehicles and it's very unsafe for pedestrians, even with the painted crosswalk. It's just too wide. There's no safe place. There's no sort of place of refuge there for people to get out, and cars go too fast around that corner because they can. So I applaud all the thinking you're doing. I think it's a great start, but if we're gonna put this kind of investment in our streets, let's get the alignment where it should be, and let's really take a bigger look at that. And preference pedestrian safety, preference bicycle infrastructure, and put the curb line where it ought to be. And it's probably gonna be, it's gonna make that more expensive. But if we can prioritize and say, is Beach Street the most highest priority for this year, and then continue to get grants. I think there's a lot of money out there for, kind of transit oriented development. And so I think that we can, with Betsy's help, get some grants. But I would just like to encourage you to push it a little more aspirationally and think a little bigger about how can we really make this a pedestrian and bike first downtown? Because I think it's just a little too cautious right now, and it's not kind of dreaming big enough. So I'd love to see you work with a landscape architect who's done this kind of street work before. And then one more thing I'll say is, I think we should be talking about Heat Island and this tree canopy. I heard you mention trees, but then I didn't really see it much in the drawings. And I know from my experience working with the Cambridge tree master plan that they've been doing, that if we're going to have healthy trees that are going to survive, we can't plant them in tree pits anymore. They have to be in either connected tree trenches, which is expensive but ensures a long-term tree plan, or work with the Friends of Manchester Trees, plant trees on the backside of the curb in the parklands and kind of factor that into the plan. So much as I want trees on the sidewalk, I don't think just dotting them into the sidewalk is a long-term solution, and it also does result in kind of necking down what are already too narrow. So that's a lot. I really thank you for your work, but I would encourage you to let's dream a little bigger here and really make it some pedestrian first downtown.
Yeah, good point.
I think some of the things you're saying, not all of them, but some of the things you're saying are kind of there. This is kind of conceptual, like with the sidewalks, I think those haven't really been designed, but I think that's obviously that is very, very important.
Yeah, I think if you, well, somebody maybe Elsa made a starting point about like, we're trying not to move the curbs and just keep with the existing alignment. So if you're gonna repave an asphalt, keep the curbs, fine, as an interim measure, our sidewalks are a mess. But if we're gonna take the investment and really, wanna make this a downtown that we can be proud of, then really let's shape the street to the right kind of pedestrian environment that it ought to be. I would love to see that, totally get behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot more we can do for bikes too, with like infrastructure and more clearly defined lanes and all that, which the curbs can help with. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Mary?
Thank you. I think this was great. I think, trying to get a sidewalk in a street and parking all in one, can't move the sidewalk too much because you need the cars there. So I just had two quick questions. And obviously it makes sense. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it, to put the utilities underground in a flood plain district. Does that all work? Betsy?
Can it be done? Are you asking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's safer than above ground wires in a flood. So,
You can actually put wiring in underneath the water.
Yeah.
So
I guess
it
just
just
cost.
has to be installed appropriately.
And there is a lot of looking at, I just wanted to respond to your question, if I may. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. There is looking at overhead wires for resiliency, putting them underground because of trees falling on them. So a lot of communities are looking at putting their wires underground for resiliency, actually.
yeah, I mean, we have, where I live, our utilities are on the ground, so, but I just didn't know if you could, it made sense to do it now, knowing in a flood. Seems like, then are any of the parking sizes going to increase? So I saw some of the pictures where you're going up Summer and C Street there. And other areas, because you really can't fit 2 lanes of traffic and parking there. You're going over into the middle lane when you're going up there. So I'm just wondering if within any of the plans, are parking sizes increasing so that a car can fit? And two
Not
lanes of
sure
traffic. can
exactly
fit?
sure where you're speaking.
So when you're going up, let's say Laughing Gull is on your
Can you bring it
left.
up, Sarah?
Let me see if I can,
Is that
I
also
think
sold?
even in front of the mooring is a perfect
Yeah,
example
trying
too.
the morning is, I almost got killed
Oh,
there.
that area.
But it's consistent.
I know it's a catch-22 that we need the parking. We don't want to get rid of a spot.
Is this where you're
There's
talking
that
about here?
last spot there that you always have to go.
This
That's a
area.
place, to match what you're saying, that's a place where the curb lines maybe have to modify to maximize both the sidewalk. Maximize the sidewalk, but also enable whatever part.
Well, parking in front of the mooring and the Manchester by the Book, that doesn't make any sense to me because it's so difficult for a biker. Sorry, Mary, I was trying to respond, but I'll let you continue.
Is that the place you were talking about?
No, I think.
So in front of the mooring is one, and then if you're going up Summer Street, you've got Laughing Gull on your right, and you're
Sarah has
going
it
up by I
Is this in here? I can't make it, I can't find.
So you're going up and then the old
These
cemetery is
are-
on your left.
Yeah.
Where you get
Oh,
this
yeah,
lighting.
yeah.
In here.
So
So winding up the hill there.
correct, there's parking spots there, and I always laugh a little because there's no way I can go up, a car could be parked and a car could come down, like somebody's got to pause, right? And so I'm just wondering if within this plan, everything's staying the same size, or are we gonna try to accommodate that we aren't going into the oncoming traffic to get around the parked cars? As you do in front of the
I
mooring.
really hope so.
Which happens in front of the mooring, right? Like
Yeah.
that little
The
curve.
mooring is, yeah.
So
awkward.
unfortunately, we'd either have to get rid of parking spots or rejigger it somehow. So I just didn't know if that was.
I just said,
Elsa, are you still on the line?
I am. Yeah, so with regards to like Summer Street, there's actually existing parking out there already. So we're just kind of, putting parking spaces just to formalize that. So it's not really changing, the width of the road or anything, or the travel lane. Everywhere that we're trying to, achieve is to have 11-foot travel lanes, along the roadway there. So.
But in no time are we gonna reduce the width of the travel lanes below effective design principles.
Correct, yeah, so we want to make sure that, there's minimum width,
I'm not sure exactly how to answer your question.
Yeah,
Other than
it's
we'll
just-
certainly look at it.
Yeah, and maybe nothing can be done, but I see it on School Street, Lower School Street, where we have a parking lane, but a car can't actually fit there. So they're over the line when they're parked.
Yeah.
So that means the car coming down can't fit if a car is coming up, right? So it just creates all these little pockets in town that get risky.
So noted.
Thank
She
you.
certainly heard the question.
Thank you.
We call that character in Manchester. That's
I know,
character.
what it is.
A what?
Character.
You're
I didn't hear it.
character.
Character. So no, I call it really dangerous. And I've asked this question over and over again. So if we're spending this money and we're doing it, we're keeping the situation dangerous. So, I mean, I have to travel down School Street all the time. So I think if there's not enough for a car parked and someone to travel on a main thoroughfare in town, we need to eliminate the parking. It's not safe. Like specifically School Street, we just paid a ton of money. People, it looks ridiculous that cars are parked over the line and you need to go into opposing traffic. I've sent several.
We can
emails.
take School Street on a different time, but the fact is that the bylaw is what allows people to park in this town, not the lines. So that's what needs to be addressed.
But I don't,
If that's
correct. I understand, but my point is, well, if we have a consultant, and I'm assuming we paid the consultant some good money, why are we not talking about where the car can physically park and a car can pass? And three things can happen at once. Like,
I think
don't see that.
I think we can address this on Summer Street. Like it's certainly
Address it
certainly
on-
within the
on-
context of what we're doing.
Correct, but I didn't see this addressed on Central Street in front of the mooring.
well, it was discussed, it wasn't a finalized design.
So
How that
I
was
think
going
what you're seeing is the concept of what our design intent is going to be. A finite detailed planning, actual dimensions, actual need to move a curved line, spans, whatever, is still yet to happen. So we'll certainly address.
But I
that.
think the idea of losing a parking spot is like would create havoc, right? So are we ignoring that conversation or are we just?
Oh, no,
No, quite. not.
And the other thing is, I think the lines, while they might be, following some industry standard. School Street looks like Cambridge right now to me. It doesn't look like a small historic town. So putting that all throughout the downtown, I don't know if there's different colors, if you can use like silver reflective, but the white, to me, you lose the town charm. And back to Pine and Central. Can we pull up that slide?
I did, we just mentioned that School Street is not anything that we've been involved with.
Well, the pictures look similar. I mean, that's what I'm saying. So is it possible then to redefine the curbs at the gas station? Because I think that's a big, like as a town, we're in charge of curb cuts and curbing. Can we redefine the gas station so you can't just open and, enter and leave at any?
Are you talking about the former Richdale's or are you talking about the Pine?
Pine and Central.
Fine.
That is a separate project from this. I mean, we're well aware of the issues at Central and Pine Street. I have scars on my back from working with what was attempted under Complete Streets at that corner and finally dropped. I think that on that particular corner, we need to get some buy-in and consensus from the abutters as we move forward, because that has been a challenge. As a committee, we made a considered decision to separate that issue from what we're showing you tonight.
I think it's just one property owner, the gas station, correct?
Are they gonna make it one way or something?
Well, no, there's.
No,
there's-
mine's a curb. My point at the gas station, there's no curbing. There's no way in and way out. You can kind of go anywhere. So if you're coming either way and someone's leaving the gas station, you don't know where they're going because there's nowhere to indicate where they're coming in and out. That's my point. And so could you pull up that intersection? Because at that particular point, there's nowhere to cross and go towards Tux Point. It only assumes that you're going downtown.
I think,
It was one of the
it's in the
first.
scope.
No.
And it was in the other, it was in Elsa's.
Elsa's, what it might look like. Pull up that slide if she's still around.
Yeah, she's still there.
Sure, I can do that. Hang on one
I think it was like the first intersection, if I'm wrong.
second.
Nothing to, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I live right there and I can see it out my window of my house, so I hear all the cars going through there. And definitely it's not something that we've done as part of this, but that is on the table that we want to, at the time, we do any implementation, that this is part of the implementation, because that's one of the worst intersections with that.
You mean here?
Yes.
Mm,
Outside your
No.
structure.
Yeah, that's-
Oh, yeah, okay.
Picture up
but
in the left.
there was a slide that showed the sidewalks. Maybe it's the next one then? No, I think actually
Yeah, that's it.
That one.
this one. So I think if I'm correct, the gas station is like to the left, that
Yes.
whitish, okay. So this doesn't allow anyone to come down Pine and go left, and then to go right towards Beverly.
You mean a pedestrian or a car?
Pedestrian.
So this is something that
Yeah.
we are anticipating working on a different design for the intersection itself. So what's shown here is the improvements that we would make to the sidewalks and curbing to, continue the look and feel as was discussed. And then the actual turning movements and pedestrian movements within the intersection need to be vetted out against actual traffic counts, actual peak rates, morning peak, afternoon peak, things like that. So that's part of a separate scope, which wasn't included in this initial study. And so that's why we haven't shown any improvements on the corner with the gas station.
Wasn't there a rotary there once temporarily?
That goes back to the Complete Streets project. And we had several different things that were tried, none of which worked or were received good acceptance from the community. So we're back to square one in terms of addressing that intersection, which again, I emphasize, as Chuck said, is a separate project from what we're looking at tonight.
I guess then my final concern would be just, putting in these lines and not considering the flow of traffic and crossing the line. That to me is, so I don't see, and follow up on Laura with the trees. I mean, my street was never maintained. Is there a budget for maintaining trees if you're doing this? Because the trees weren't maintained, the trees have to come down, and it's not quaint historic anymore because the mature trees and then the sidewalks are damaged. So I guess, where is the traffic and the lines and the distance being addressed? At what phase of this project?
It's from the very beginning. When you talk about the traffic, we're not doing the Pine Street intersection as we just discussed, but the traffic all the way through the town, all the way up to Washington Street is being addressed.
So you're eliminating spaces in front of the mooring.
We haven't, no, we're not eliminating as of yet. We're still working on the details of that.
But the consultant, is she finished? Is she gonna come back with phase three?
She could show you the, also, could you show the parking in front of the mooring? Right at the big straight there. That is, yeah.
3 spots, 4 spots,
Sometimes 5 spots, I think.
so you're stopping
At
it
least
at 4.
So this is a conceptual level
So-
design that we have evaluated a few different alternatives within the context of the, area that was shown. The next step would be to go to a actual design where we would incorporate full roadway survey of all the area. And there might be some instances where things need to be a little tweaked here or there to shuffle, but in general, the concepts are as what's shown. If we can keep the parking at the mooring, that is certainly the goal of the project. If the project has to remove the parking at the mooring, then that will happen at that time, but it's premature for us to do it. As shown there on that screen, there's 2 11-foot lanes with the parking. So there's no need to show it removed right now, but once we get the final design with the actual surveyed layouts, then there might be some tweaking that needs to be done. So we shouldn't get into the details on 11-foot lanes and parking here and there. The general concept is what's important right now, and we will be back with additional work as we can complete it. So I think that's what needs to be taken away here.
So we're just looking at aesthetics, is that, we're not really looking at safety, is that what?
No,
is
no,
that correct?
clearly we're. clearly-
We are looking at safety, and we think that we can accommodate both safety and the layout as
Yeah.
what is desired by both the business owners of the downtown and the community within the downtown. If something has to compromise, it will be at a later time.
So is the yellow lines, is that what would be on the street? Is that it? I guess I'm not sure.
The yellow lines with less cement.
So the middle, these are the center lines of the roadway. I don't know if you actually see me point, but the double yellow, like right in the middle of the center line, and then the kind of muted yellow, that's the sidewalk, the proposed sidewalks.
Are there any flashing lights proposed with this project?
Currently, there are no flashing light proposed for any of these locations. But once again, as Chuck mentioned, that's something that you can kind of flesh out later on in the design. But right now, there's there are no plans on the flashing crossing signs.
Laura?
I'm taking issue with the starting point that the goal is to preserve parking and only tweak. So I think we have to ask ourselves some hard questions as a town and say, what do we want? Do we want a historic looking, gracious, walkable downtown that kind of echoes with, the large trees and walking side by side? Or do we want a town that's convenient for parking at the expense of pedestrians? So we're gonna nibble away at bump outs that we put before. We're gonna make our crosswalks wider to the point where they don't feel safe to cross. And I look at the parking outside the mooring and I think it's dangerous. It's the wrong place for parking. It's too narrow there. And if the starting point is we gotta preserve every space and we're only gonna tweak, and then what we're gonna get is a compromise that doesn't really make anybody happy. So it's not wide enough to walk on the sidewalks. You can't walk side by side. You can't push a walker down the sidewalk. And yet you're sort of doing it kind of
There just
halfway.
isn't enough space to do everything that everyone likes to do.
I agree. So I think we have to say, do we need a parking space? Maybe we should have some options that say, if we want to look at a wider sidewalk, then we might need to remove a few parking spaces, but let's do the study so that we can see what the choices are. Rather than saying, we're gonna compromise and try to fit everything that's in there now. The parking is not historic to the downtown, so let's just make this, what do we want it to be? Not just like, let's try to, please as many people and end up with a compromise solution. So I'm just taking issue with the starting goal, which is don't eliminate any parking spaces. I think we should look hard at how the downtown should be aligned in the curve and the lanes.
I don't want to go back and forth, Laura. I, generally agree with what you're saying, but I would love to have a conversation with you offline about this in terms of other areas as well, when you have a chance.
Great.
Well, you've taken on a challenging project, and I appreciate all of your hard work. And the reason I know that it was planning board, phase one was a planning board project because I was on the planning board, and then I was on the downtown improvement committee before it actually implemented anything. And so I've heard these arguments are 20 years old, or these challenges, these compromises. So I don't have the solution. So I guess my point in saying that is, no matter what solution comes, there will be critics and they will be loud. So be courageous and set your design goals and work to, get near perfect, recognizing it's going to be hard. So I appreciate all your willingness to take it on, because you're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole, or whatever it is. But a couple other thoughts. The bump out in front of the post office was very deliberately, hotly debated, widely criticized, and was done because people felt that pedestrians couldn't be seen as you came from the beach, as they stepped off that curb. So you've got a great engine. VHB is well known as an engineering firm. So before that one gets too much traction, really think about, people prior to that bump out, you guys, many of you lived in town, people were hit there as they stepped off that curb. So
you're suggesting, Sarah, that we
leave the bump
keep
out.
the bump out as is?
Yes, absolutely. And there are plenty of places to people who don't know how to back up their car to park at other places. You park up on Summer Street. So that's just that piece of history, for whatever it's worth. That particular bump out on both sides by the post office was just hotly contributed, and widely criticized, but for whatever that's worth. The other thing that I just wanted to raise is I bike a lot. Is there a way to actually safely direct cyclists, not kids, but cyclists, to actually bike from the Pines, the intersection we were just talking about, through to the track, say, bike in the middle as traffic? That's how I ride it. I ride in the middle of but to encourage that. It slows down traffic. People don't need to go faster than I can bike, which isn't very fast. And you guys know, VHB and others know that, but how do you get people to actually be the cyclists to be part of the solution? And the other thing is, there are cyclists who, pass me on the right when I'm driving a car. So, let's get some enforcement on cyclists too. That's it's a system, and I don't think cyclists are entirely without fault in the safety of them. And I would encourage our enforcement people to enforce the speed limits for cyclists and the safety and the stopping at stop signs. The other thing is, I stood out holding signs one time at that stop sign in front of, this is ghost enforcement, but including Manchester Police, that we all said that stop sign is optional.
Which one?
The one by the by the post office coming from Beach Street toward, so we just we need to couple this with across, that's not your charge, but to the extent that we are including enforcement for speed and for stopping. So whatever. The other last thing, I was just gonna point out two last things, sorry. One is that we have this other problem that I think we haven't talked about, which is the large delivery trucks that come through town. And the intersection by the mooring, Union and Washington Street by the old Zax. As well as, large boat trailers and, I mean, we have a lot of boat trailers that go through that intersection and a lot of trailers, a lot of deliveries going to Crosby's, which I think gives us an additional challenge there and maybe hours of restrict access through that intersection by certain sized things at, trailers and tractor trailers, or restrict the parking during the hours that the large deliveries come through that intersection. I don't know, some sort of creative, I think we have to acknowledge that we have of some very large vehicles that go through that intersection. And if you're driving a boat trailer through there, you are well over the line onto, by Cargo Unlimited. If you're coming from going toward the beach, it's impossible to drive. So, maybe it's restricted during certain times. It's not unheard of in other places. It might help solve to some of the problems. And then lastly, because we're the planning board, I think it'd be very helpful as you further develop your goals and your design standards, that we work them into zoning, so that as people change a use or change, come for a building permit or a variance, or that they are required to adhere to the design standards in front of their property, to return them to when they make a curb cut or a utility access, that they are required with maybe a performance guarantee for in making sure that they're returned to the appropriate design standards. Because I think some of the things you mentioned in your slideshow have evolved because of utility access or other kinds of things. So I think be courageous and as you move in from the concept stage into it, as Chuck said, into a actual design, I have confidence that you'll balance all these things wonderfully.
Sarah, can I ask a question?
Of
So as far as planning board requirements and zoning criteria here, you're not referring to storefront design or signage size or signage type or font or anything
Those could be zoned. And we have signage, we have sign requirements, we have
Yeah,
historic district
but not
requirements.
limitations as to what can be put up there. It's
There are some sign, not size of signs and that kind of thing, lit
Okay.
signs are restricted, there's the historic district requirements, but those are there are opportunities to use zoning. Zoning only applies to things that are taking out a permit, they don't apply retroactively. Looking forward, we are undertaking thoughts about zoning in that whole area with the MBTA zoning task force. I think that this could be part of those, design standards. Could be
That's,
part of that.
is a state route, does any state standards apply to town? Road standards?
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, Chuck?
Still on.
I don't know the answer to that, Ron. But Chuck would better,
You mean
You have to get a
Yeah, he is, he's on that.
if you're on a state road.
Is it
I'm
a
sure
state road?
VHB knows that. And to the
Is it a
extent
state road through town or is it town jurisdiction?
Sorry, I missed the question. What was the question again?
Chuck is a state road, right? 120, it's a state route through town?
127 is, but we have town jurisdiction from Ashland to C Street, basically. Does that answer the question or?
Yeah. That's what- Okay.
So I-
Go ahead, Chris.
So I think it's interesting that the entrance to the town from both Gloucester and from Beverly starts with terrible intersections. So we have Bennett Street and Pine Street on one end and C Street and Washington Street on the other. Is there any attempt to restart some sort of a design work for the C Street intersection? I know there was a lot of controversy about it.
Well, we took a run at it with the Complete Streets project, and there was so much controversy at both ends about anything that was proposed that we severed that from this project. But that does not mean that we're not cognizant of that. We certainly intend to undertake those in the not too distant future as separate projects and see if we can reach some consensus on that, but those turned out to be very, very thorny issues.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you propose the current layouts to a clean slate and you propose those layouts to the abutters, I don't think that would be the worst possible design you could come up with. So it's just, I don't know whether it's worth another shot to sit down with the abutters and see if there
Well,
can be
I
a solution.
I mean, my impression or my sense is that well, everyone had the best of intentions with Complete Streets. I think we found ourselves with the state program that sort of was based on some generalized standards, which then were attempted to, in order to participate in that program, they had to be imposed upon very irregular intersections that were not typical kinds of things, those typical standards were posed upon. And every time although we all tried our best to produce an improvement on at least sort of traditional traffic engineering standards, they were so upsetting to abutters and people who were traveling through them. I remember spending time taking car counts down at the roundabout at Central and Pine to see how many people would even obey it on a trial basis. And it was just, there was not even a willingness to try to obey the temporary thing, plus various abutters dislike that. So what I think, to try to do it the other way, my sense is if we can convene the abutters to have and brainstorm with the abutters and see if there was some kind of consensus around that, and then work out from that, just to try a completely different approach. But as a discrete thing separate from this project.
Sure, yeah, of course.
So those two things are on our scheduled things to do. We've been so preoccupied with this particular project that we haven't had much bandwidth to work with on those other matters, but we haven't forgotten them by any means. Would you guys care to add anything to that? I know you.
I was gonna say specifically on the Pine Street. There were other options available other than the roundabout. One of them, I think, would be something to use as a starting point for a discussion that's probably pretty close to maybe the optimal solution, maybe not the optimal solution, but it's something we can work off from to have a conversation with all the others.
That's great. I have one final point, which is to reiterate what Sarah said about piggybacking on the MBTA zoning program that we're going through to make sure we're coordinated. So you're not doing something that's going to have to be changed when somebody wants to build a residential unit somewhere, so.
You're the liaison to the board.
Yes, luckily I am.
So noted, we have one of our members on that.
And Gar is an outspoken person as well.
So,
We should also say that the signage and wayfinding is also will be coordinated with us too. We're not
Yes,
gonna be acting alone. This will be a well thought out entire program.
Yeah.
I have a question for Elsa. So Elsa, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I guess my question is, hopefully you can answer it. What is there an industry standard for 2 lanes of traffic in opposing directions and parking with? And can you cite that somewhere?
Yeah,
And
so
I-
you know, in general, you want to have like 11-foot travel lanes. Oh, sorry, it's a little distracting looking at myself, like large screen here. 11-foot travel lanes is what we have. And then parking, generally we have 8-foot minimum parking. We don't want to go anything, less than 11-foot lanes as far as travel, so that people, when there's an emergency, people can bypass. And there's when there's emergency, the emergency vehicles can bypass and stuff. So as far as, kind of back to your question of, fitting everything within the existing and also providing, enough width for sidewalks and stuff, that's the minimum that we would have to kind of abide by.
So I guess just to follow up with Laura, like I feel once you do the specifics here and there isn't these measurements. I mean, my expectation with the next phase is that those parking spaces would be eliminated. Like there really shouldn't be any more conversation. If there isn't enough road for 2 lanes of traffic and parking, the parking spaces need to be eliminated. Safety is number 1. It's just getting pretty dangerous. A lot of visitors, people that are familiar with the town, maybe off season, people can navigate these roads without, too much concern, but especially in the summer, when out of town people are visiting the beach, that's the direct route to the beach. It gets very, very dangerous.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, Steve
Thank you.
and Kurt and Gordon for coming
Very
in.
welcome.
Hopefully you can come back to us again and keep us informed
Of
as to
course.
how you develop. Be
Absolutely,
happy to have
and-
you back for the board.
Yep, and in the new spirit of keeping all the boards and committees together, I mean, Ron and I talk much more frequently than we used to, and we'll continue to do so.
Great, and yeah, hopefully these comments will take.
We'll take these
Very
under,
good.
Comment from the board. That are good. Thank you.
Ran its off.
So up next is the Civic Space
Collaborative.
Committee. Daniel Kopp, are you on?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Okay, and you have a presentation, I assume?
Yes, we do.
Co-host?
And it looks like I have screen capabilities, which is great. So let me share my screen and get that. Oh,
They
oh,
should have
I'm a co-host. Great.
We've seen this.
Yeah, so Civic Space Collaborative was a consultant who was hired before I came on board. This was a grant with the Mass Downtown Initiative Program. And they also came in and worked with Tiffany on Skating by the Sea. That was another grant. But this one was specifically on placemaking in the town center. So, and Daniel and Claudia were both involved in this. Take it away, Daniel.
All right. Well, thank you, Betsy, for the intro and also for introducing us to so many wonderful people in Manchester and for helping to coordinate feedback as we were assessing the existing conditions and generating ideas. Also, thank you to the folks from the Downtown Improvement Committee that I saw in the meeting. We met with them 5 times over the course of this project. So their input was really helpful, as well as members from the Bike and Ped Committee, the Historic District Commission, the Historical Museum, and I'm not forgetting anyone, but we realized that we have not, oh, and the select board as well, we've met with throughout this project. At least once during this project, but we have not met with the planning board yet, so I'm excited to share the results with you tonight. And just want to let you know, we've heard some preliminary feedback from folks on the planning board, noticing that although we haven't met with you yet, you're in the acknowledgements. And I just want to let you know, if by the end of this presentation, if you want us to remove the planning board from the plan, we're open to sending you another version. Or if there are any other edits like that by the end of this, that you see that you'd like us to recommend to make, we're happy to do that at this time.
Can I just ask you to recommend to whom? You said to recommend to. So who's the audience of your recommendations?
The recommendations are for the town, which includes you. So this is, this plan was, as Betsy said, came out of a competitive application to the Community One Stop for Growth Mass Downtown Initiative. And this was a result of a 6-month process to create a holistic placemaking plan. This was one of the recommendations that came out of the Essex Manchester Local Rapid Recovery Program from 2021. So this follows up on that LRP program. And it's meant to create a think holistically about downtown, and to select up to 4 different placemaking components that could be conceived of together as a holistic package to improve placemaking, to activate.
I believe you actually did a presentation in last December. Yeah,
To the planning board.
yep,
Okay,
you did.
all right. Okay, thanks for jogging my memory.
And there were comments at that time because you were doing, or it might have been a little later because,
Around the time of the survey.
yeah, it was around the time of the survey, Skating by the Sea survey. So it might have been a
Yeah.
little later than that. Maybe it was March.
Okay, that was I thought that was to the Board of Selectmen, but
Well, there was one to the Board of Selectmen and there was also one to the Planning Board, I believe.
okay,
So you have presented to this board before.
okay, great. Thanks for clarifying. So hopefully all of this won't be too much of a surprise. And we can dive into the details. So the local rapid recovery program had established boundaries for that program that were slightly altered for this placemaking plan to focus more on the walkable parts of downtown. So the LRP extended all the way around the Inner Harbor. We decided to cut it off to the more walkable parts, focusing more on this downtown core, and extending up to Elm Street to connect to the conservation land. Since one of downtown Manchester's core strengths is its accessibility to wonderful open spaces nearby. Also, it includes Masconoma Park and Reed Park, which are outside the boundaries of the historic district. So working with the Downtown Improvement Committee, we selected 4 different projects to focus on. So they are streetscape furniture, wayfinding, public art, and public restrooms. And so I'll go through each one, showing you what we learned and what we're recommending to shift. So starting with streetscape furniture and specifically benches, as you can see from this map of existing benches, there are quite a few in downtown. And so we did not feel the need to recommend too many more, except to make sure that your downtown is kind of reading cohesively. So For example, at the time when we were making these maps, I believe this may have changed already, but there were 4 benches along the inner harbor here that were past their life, their life, and I believe they've been replaced by new teak benches, which is great, because that was one of our recommendations. Also, there are some tired benches in Reed Park as well that could use some updating. And the only new benches we're thinking that really could be added was in this potential future pocket park adjacent to the mechanics lot. Would be a nice site for a pocket park and for seating and enjoyment. As you'll see from the different shapes, the square are these memorial benches, and there are quite a few in specific areas. So looking at your existing and proposed, we have 3 noticed, not counting the tired benches that we're suggesting that you replace, that have a concrete base and wooden supports. You have these new teak benches, a few metal benches with the memorial plaque, and then these memorial granite benches. And for the new benches that are especially going to be in a kind of new area, we're recommending a different style that would be kind of more aligned with a traditional bench with a cast iron support, but would still have a wooden slats that will be cool to the touch in the summer, and that will be nice, and that won't be too cold in the winter and won't be too hot in summer. And we recommended, since you have an overabundance of these granite benches, especially around Reed Park, we're recommending that you kind of sunset that granite bench memorial program. Those benches will last for eternity, which is great, but they're also, as you may notice, not super comfortable to sit on. And so we're suggesting a more functional bench moving forward, but that you continue this memorial program has been a huge success, as you see from the wide variety of benches that you've been able to install. All right, so moving on to tables, which is the flip side. There are very few tables to sit at downtown. And that was one of the things that we noticed is there's not very many places where you could grab a bite to eat downtown and then bring it to public park and enjoy. There are a few kind of traditional style picnic benches in Masconoma Park, and we're recommending new tables in Reed Park, potentially some in this pocket park, and also in this area by the landing, the town landing, which we think could be a nice, and also a nice little parklet area with this inner harbor improved. There are also, I should note, some lovely benches and tables and just wonderful collection of streetscape furniture at the library. Would say this is a great example of how a kind of cohesive collection of furniture thoughtfully placed can create a wonderful space. So this is a picture of the table set at the library, wayfinding signs around. It's a really lovely place. Example of the traditional style table at Masconoma Park that doesn't have too much excitement going on with it, but serves its purpose. And we're recommending, especially in Reed Park, this more stable set of furniture that will be really comfortable. We'll have a back, which will be comfortable for people of all ages. And it can also, the tabletops can also come with, chess tables, etc., to provide more activity.
Would that be on grass or on pavement?
So we're thinking that in Reed Park specifically, that you would put a pad of like brick down, and it would sit on the brick, similar to this. So not being on grass like this one. We also looked at trash receptacles. There are a few existing of various forms. And so we're recommending this could be a good way to create more consistency downtown, is to create a more consistent selection of them and to make sure that they're scattered around places where people are going to be walking. And so we have it one down by this pedestrian pathway, again by the town landing. I think you could have one adjacent to the town hall, the new pocket park, and along Beach Street. So the existing trash receptacles, as I was mentioning, are there are different varieties. You know, you have a new nice one. We're recommending you can stick with it, go with it, but get a rain bonnet, which will keep the rain away from getting inside the liner, and it will also keep seagulls away. Versus this kind of trash can, which may serve a functional purpose, but doesn't hold, I think, portray downtown in the way that you may want it to. Bike racks. The Bike and Ped Committee has done a wonderful job of installing bike corrals throughout downtown. And we're proposing that as a next step, you consider bike posts that can go on the street. So this is an example of a bike corral that does multiple. They can't fit on your narrow sidewalk. So we're recommending this kind of style, which can go on, can be attached to parking meters if you do move in that direction, or they can just stand alone. And these kind of bike racks can have a custom logo inside. So when we get to wayfinding, we'll talk about how you could develop a new kind of brand for the town that could be unfolded across your wayfinding and also some of your streetscape furniture. So moving to wayfinding, what we found is that that there are quite a few signs specifically for business directories that are on the street. There's a lot of vehicular signage, but the signage for pedestrians is somewhat lacking. That said, there's a lot going on in Manchester. It's a beautiful town, and I don't think you want to kind of create visual clutter with too many additional pedestrian signs. So we're recommending that you focus on mostly on developing a custom kiosk for Manchester that could be installed in any one of these kind of key locations. As people get off their boats, they can become oriented at the kiosk. As folks are over here, same thing, right in the heart of downtown. So the kiosk can serve multiple purposes. They can have a map and provide orientation. They can promote local businesses. They can have current events. Right now, this fence serves kind of dual purpose of being a kind of signage area for the town to promote local community events. And we think that could be formalized potentially with a kiosk. There's also room for some pedestrian signs specifically to be improved, specifically around to encourage people to use the pedestrian walkway, connecting from Beach Street to the municipal lot. And that could be folded into the kiosk RFP in the future. So an example of some of the visual clutter that you see, the MBTA, local business signs, and then this sign for the pedestrian sign can kind of get lost. A lot of business signs. So we're recommending that for these temporary signs, it's a great pilot project. And we're thinking that you could move forward with that on something more of a permanent basis with a more robust post and more permanent directional arrow signage to encourage people to use that pathway. And then for the kiosks, there's a few different models. You know, there's a multi-sided kiosk, or you can do a double-sided kiosk. There's kiosks that unfold. So that's something I think if you hired a wayfinding designer, if you put an RFP together, you'd be able to get someone who could walk you through those options and come up with something that I think would be really great for the town and help pedestrians navigate through space and learn about the history. All right, so moving on to public art. Speaking of the history of the town, in our assessment of the existing public art, we've found that there are some wonderful pieces like this mural, but all the artwork downtown is commemorative in nature. Even this one, which celebrates the kind of founders of Brown's Market. It's nothing wrong with commemorative art, but I think art can serve other purposes, and that's something that we talk about in the plan. So looking at your existing artwork, you have commemorative works, which we're calling the mural, the new Veterans Memorial. There's another Veterans Memorial here, and also lovely statue, which is began the Veterans Memorial. So thinking more broadly about public art, it can help create more of a sense of place downtown. It can create more safety, encourage more pedestrian behavior, and it can also propose new futures. And so we'll talk about those. But just real quick, I'm going to show you what we're talking about, and then we can talk about where they are. So the existing Chief Masconomo statue, we have the Veterans Memorials and mural at Crosby's as your existing artwork. And in the future, we're proposing that you think about more murals, specifically on at least one more side of Crosby's sidewalk gallery along the pedestrian walkway, painted electrical boxes, a creative crosswalk, and temporary sculptures. So I can show you where those would be. So along the pedestrian walkway, there's this fence here that could be a great place for a sidewalk gallery of banners. So on that artwork, you could promote the work of local artists. You could have an annual call for art for school children that could be printed on banners and posted along that gallery as a way to bring people to the space and encourage visitors to use it. There's also some really great blank walls along this pedestrian walkway that could be painted with murals. Other murals along Crosby's, specifically this wall here on the eastern side. I think if you walk around this space, because of the setbacks of these buildings with the parking in front, it creates a really open environment. And I think a mural here would create more of a container for the street and establish more of a sense of place in summer and kind of fold it more into the downtown core. Let's see, we are banners, sculpture, creative crosswalk. This is one that I think could be really fun. This is something that got a lot of great feedback when we were tabling in Masconoma Park during the Skate by the Sea event. Having a creative crosswalk connecting Masco to Captain Dusty's would be really fun for kids. It would also signal to drivers to slow down in this area. And it could also propose new futures. This is an installation you could do for relatively cheap. And it could be done before, in anticipation of implementing some of the findings from the VHP study. I know they were talking about potentially having a traffic hump, a raised crosswalk here. You know, painting the crosswalk could be a way to signal to folks downtown in town that changes are coming and to, you know, be prepared for that. And it could be something something that could be repainted once the new streetscape is realigned. And then sculpture, there's great opportunity for temporary sculpture that can be in these parks to encourage people to go downtown. Sculptures can propose new futures. I know you're thinking about the MBTA study, you're doing a lot of thinking about climate change, and artwork can be a way to talk about these issues in a way that's not so loaded and in a way that can be kind of fun and playful. And so I think it's something to think about moving forward. This is an example of a temporary sculpture. These pieces last 1 to 5 years. They're made by local Massachusetts artists. There's one in Lowell being made right now from Owl Myth Makers. And lastly, public restrooms. I know you all put a lot of thought into public restrooms and heard a lot about how building out more restrooms could be a way to create more of a welcoming space for visitors. And so we walked downtown with Jim Brown, an owner of a lot of these buildings who knows, has a very intimate knowledge of the restroom situation. And we found that restrooms in local businesses is limited for a variety of reasons, and that relying on local businesses to provide public accommodation is not really feasible. So it's kind of up to the public here to the municipality to provide those resources. So there is a restroom at the library, and recently found out there is one at Town Hall that is now open 24/7, thanks to a realignment. You go through the police station, I believe you can access it. So that's wonderful, but it's not widely known, especially for people who are getting off the train and going to Singing Beach. So we considered restrooms at all of these different locations. And we're recommending that you consider installing new facilities in these two locations, one by the sewer division and one at Mascanoma Park adjacent to Beach Street. And the different conditions in these areas, I think, present different opportunities to invest in different kinds of facilities. So can take you through those two options. So the options are kind of customized off the shelf or a custom facility. And heard from a lot of people that if there's going to be something on Beach Street that's going to be part of downtown, you want it to be beautiful, you want it to be representative of the town, you want it to be custom, which is completely understandable. There's a great example in Concord that may be a little bit more than what you would need in Manchester. But you do have a model that's pre-existing of the historic bathhouse from Singing Beach. You could hire an architect to create a custom design that would call attention to this history, which we think would be wonderful for this Beach Street area. There was a study 2 years ago conducted about restroom facilities looking at Reed Park and Mascanoma Park, specifically this area, looking at connections to utilities, permitting issues, et cetera. And so we address those more in the plan. You can read more, but essentially having a restroom here would enable the town to tap into existing utilities on Beach Street, which would be a plus. And also having a restroom adjacent to the sewer division would also enable you to tap into existing utilities. Because and we considered these different locations also attracting different audiences. So obviously this would attract visitors going to Beach Street. A restroom here could also service folks who are at Mascanoma Park in any number of the events over the summer and winter. Whereas a restroom over here could service boaters and people in the municipal lot. So here you might have a kind of flood of people coming in at one time to use the facility. Whereas here we're imagining it might be, you know, 1 or 2 people going to their car or coming off their boat. So a smaller facility could be used here. And we're thinking for the facility by the sewer division, because the sewer division is already a cinder block building tucked away from downtown, not on your core area, and I believe it's outside the historic district. You could think about installing one that's off the shelf. Something off the shelf like this, we included a quote in the appendix of the meeting plan. You're welcome to look at it. There's a lot of different options for ways to customize the facade and the interiors. And this would cost less than half of what a custom facility would cost, and would also be flood resistant in that if this were to flood, the structure would remain intact and you could refit it with new modular components. So it would be pretty robust and climate resilient. So as far as next steps, an overview, I think you're already ahead of the game with some of the streetscape furniture recommendations. We recommended installing the 4 outdated ones at Masco Park. I believe those have already been replaced with new teak benches, which is great. The next step would be to do the same thing at Reed Park, and to think about, instead of the teak benches, maybe going with the Victor Stanley bench, something that has a cast iron support, more traditional feel. Thinking about installing new trash receptacles with rain bonnets would make the downtown more welcoming. And installing bike racks on the street would be also more welcoming to bikers, so they don't have to kind of bike into a back area to find a corral. In terms of wayfinding, the next step there would be to create an RFP to hire a designer to develop a custom brand for the town, out of which could unfold the kiosk, pedestrian directionals for pedestrians, and even a new gateway sign to welcome people downtown. Also, the historic marker program, I just want to note, is wonderful, and the historical museum seems to be playing a very active role in it. But there's nothing on the town website that talks about it. So that could be an area of improvement, is just making that program more widely known, that folks can apply to get a house marker installed in their town, so you can celebrate your incredible history. Public art. To move forward on the public art, we're recommending that you either work with an existing committee, or more likely just create an ad hoc public art committee of local stakeholders that could pursue funding and administer a program. This could be an application to your local LCC to start with some seed money, out of which you could create an RFP to solicit artists who would want to install, to paint a creative crosswalk or electrical boxes. So starting small, and then if you can implement something small and get a committed group going, then you can follow up with more larger scale installations, such as a gallery of banners or a mural on Crosby's or temporary sculpture along the harbor. And then in terms of public restrooms, the next steps would be to begin the permitting process at Masco Park in the municipal lot, and to hire an architect to start drawing up plans for the one at Masco Park, since that seems to be the most expensive, but also the highest priority. All right, well, that's about the end of my presentation. So I'm open to your questions and feedback at this stage.
Yeah, any thought of hiding the gray shed that the MBTA put up in Reed Park then for the traffic signal?
I heard something about the what was your question about the shed, the MBTA shed?
Some kind of, hiding it some way with maybe, I don't know, shrubs or
A bathroom.
artwork,
A bathroom.
a bathroom? Yes. Good idea. Sarah?
I think Greg is on, and I guess my question is who is the recipient of this study? Given that we didn't hear about it from the Downtown Improvement Committee, is the next step that the recommendations here go to the Downtown Improvement Committee or Select Board or, and then that was follow up?
At this point, I defer to your
I have
expertise,
a question for
Betsy,
Greg.
on that one. Oh, for Greg, okay, thank you.
Yeah, he's
Greg's
on.
No?
Yeah.
Greg, can you answer?
Sure, so,
Okay.
so we would so this ultimately goes to the selectmen for implementation. And they would want input from not only the planning board, but downtown improvement as well. And so that would also be a stop along the way.
They have been working with the Downtown Improvement Committee all the way along.
Okay, so a couple of questions. I'm trying to, bathrooms aside and safety aside, which we talked about with the planning board, I'm trying to figure out what problems your solutions solve. So can you help me understand the goals? Define placemaking, because I feel and I'll withhold my opinion. Can you help me understand the problem besides safety and bathrooms that you were trying to solve?
Yeah, we're trying to think holistically about the public realm in downtown Manchester. So, in any place, improvements are made incrementally by different property owners who will put out a bench or, bookshelf or what have you. And there can become some interstitial spaces that kind of get forgotten about. Some pieces of furniture that become tired because it's something that you see every day and you don't necessarily have a fresh look at it. So this was an attempt to think holistically about the downtown, to use these different components to create more of a welcoming space that will encourage people to linger downtown and frequent the businesses and, be able to be comfortable. So whether that's having the ability to have a picnic in the park because there are benches available, or to be able to use a public facility so they don't have to go home quickly. We think that improving the public realm can help improve your economic development as well.
I think I can give some context to this too.
Great.
So this was done during the middle of the pandemic. And I think the towns of Manchester and Essex were concerned about how they were going to recover from the pandemic and how could they attract visitors. And so they got a joint grant between the two communities. And I think their original thought was there'd be some similar solutions. But it turned out Essex went a very different way, which they're a very different town. So it turned into two very different, two different programs.
Mhm.
And the Downtown Improvement Committee was very interested in trying to solve problems for visitors, especially. That's where the bathrooms came in, and the wayfaring.
Then I have a couple of specific. I can appreciate a couple of the solutions being right for other communities. I think that rainbow colored sidewalks are not for Manchester, and I think that it just needs some more thought. That's my opinion, but as I said in the prior discussion, everyone has an opinion. I also think that we need some bike parking, but we need it in the right places. That bike parking for Manchester need not necessarily be the street, or given the prior discussion about the width of sidewalks and so forth. So I think bike parking is a good thing to think about, but where should it be? And then how do you accommodate the most number of bikes in secure place? So I guess I'm a little concerned that we are putting ornaments in places these things are individual good ideas that become kind of potentially mushed together without, somebody who really knows how to take care of them and to think carefully about the risk kind of over, I don't know, ornamenting what is, I think, the iconic. We've talked about history, but we also have the iconic harbor. And then lastly, I think we do probably need a restroom at Masconomo Park, but its location needs to be, carefully engineered with some visual studies. So, I'm not going to prejudge where you've selected it. I'll just say I think it would need a very careful set of renderings. So that's.
Yeah, this is just the first stage of, well, you've been working on this for a while. This is a continuation of your work that was meant to help it along, and it's great to hear you think that Masconomo Park is a good location. The dot on the map.
Need some thought.
The dot on the map was selected out of a site tour, a walking tour that we did with Betsy Ware and Jim Brown. And we identified a location where there's some existing hedges that already block the view of the park from the street. And we thought that some of those, they're overgrown shrubs at this point. And we thought that some of those could be replaced with the facility. But as you said, it's going to take a lot more studies and a lot more careful thought from architects and landscape architects to determine the exact spot.
So yes, I think, Chris, you're right. This was a grant money that was out. And I think these last two presentations that we had are almost conflicting with each other. I really did appreciate the crosswalk in front of Captain Dusty's with the brick and more historical. I agree, Sarah, that, painting a sidewalk in front of Captain Dusty's, I don't believe it belongs in Manchester. I guess in the longevity bench program, we have, at least 30 benches all over town that are the traditional black wrought iron that look like they're going to stand the test of time versus a wooden back that's going to need maintenance. So now we're introducing a new material into the mix. So I thought the presentation with the downtown improvement was also supposed to be streamlining lighting. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't follow the path of benches that we already have, now introducing something new. So if anything, we should just stick with the longevity benches and keep that consistent because we have several dozen of them. The tables, I do like that idea. That was a really nice idea. I'm not sure, in my opinion, the pocket park at that intersection makes sense. Children in our town tend to bike in groups, and Richdale, or the old Richdale name, is a section where those children would congregate and go in and get ice cream or candy or whatever. I think that would just turn into a bike dump for the children in town. And I think you would lose the banners and you wouldn't be able to actually see. And I do think that intersection does provide a lot of information for the town. So putting benches and a pocket park is going to block that information for town. So maybe some other updating in that area versus a park. I think that idea over near where the box is could be something to think about. I do have a concern about putting bathrooms behind town hall. If we're just making bathrooms available in town hall, it seems redundant. So maybe, look at that financial option before we put 2 bathrooms in. I do think bathrooms at Masconomo will make the most sense if we're going to put them anywhere. I wasn't a big fan of the street bikes. I mean, just our town is historic seaside community. Some of these things looked a little too urban, and I think it would, I don't know, change the feel. I do like the idea of some art, but personally, changing the benches and the bikes and, you know, the colorful sidewalks, I don't think it's, in my opinion, Manchester. But that's it.
Yeah, we were not suggesting you change out those 30 beautiful teak benches that you've.
No, but I think
installed.
why add another material? It's just, why not keep going with what we have?
Sure, yeah, that can absolutely make that decision. We just wanted to provide another option.
Ms. Tenney?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. My comments were that we do have an opportunity here to think about the public realm, and it is good to see this following on the presentation before, because the presentation before illustrated how narrow our sidewalks already are, and that's a problem. And now to put bike racks and other things that we'd like to put, furnishing zones, there's just no place on our sidewalks as they are. So that, for me, if we want to do these kinds of things, we have to think about the width of our sidewalks and accessibility overall. But I agree with you, what you said about visual clutter. So I think that we want to do this with the highest quality materials, with, you know, putting things where we need a bench or we need a bathroom, but not putting too much out there that starts to feel kind of cluttered, especially in a fairly crowded downtown. Like, let's be thoughtful about where these services are needed. And I think Manchester is so special that making all of these decisions about site furnishings and bathrooms, they should all be really particular to Manchester. So the bathhouse is a model. I think I actually mentioned that back in whenever it was the last time we met, but I think that's a great model for a bathroom that you identify as, this is a Manchester piece of architecture. And if you are going to do two, by the time you hire an architect to design a small building and build a little bathhouse type building, you might as well use the same design and put it somewhere else. But I do question whether we need a bathroom right now at Town Hall in the parking lot. I can see both sides, and that we already have a bathroom, so I think there's pretty good access for that if people understand that it's there. On the other hand, having a bathroom in the parking lot, we're really trying to get people to use the parking lot and take some of the pressure off the street parking. You know, that's one more draw. But the audience of who's using the bathroom, I think, is the important question to ask. And putting it in Mascanoma or Reed Park gets the boaters, gets the people coming off the train, gets the people who park and get out of their car, gets the cyclists, like everybody, it's on the way to everything. It's at downtown, it's on the way to the beach. And so I think really thinking about where the service is most needed is important. And while I like the bathhouse idea, I think the site furnishing that is shown is kind of a generic idea of, you know, ye old historic looking benches. That's like a very generic park bench modeled on the, you know, the kind of Central Park bench. The fixed tables, I don't think are historic looking. I think that's kind of a mismatch with the benches, but in general, I find that fixed tables and fixed benches don't fit anybody. It's too far away or it's too close. You don't fit in the chair. People have all different kinds of body sizes and abilities. And generally, I think that fixed tables and chairs just means like, we don't trust you to not take the table away, so we're going to attach it to the ground. Same, you know, with a bench placed off the table. So if there are businesses that want to put out cafe type seating, you know, you mentioned the library as the most cohesive example. None of that is fixed furnishing. It's all high quality benches and tables that are kind of too heavy to move, but people can kind of, you know, move them around a little bit or move the chair in relation to the table. So I think that's a good model. I'm not talking about the materiality, but thinking about seating that gives people choices, right? Rather than have everything fixed to the ground. And we might think about Adirondack chairs or something that can be put out on the lawn. I think the more choices you give people to gather in their own size groups and their own, you know, whatever groups they come in, I think is more successful than adding many more benches than we already have. I would agree with Christina's point about like how many bench models do we need. I personally don't love the longevity bench model because I think metal can be a little cold or a little hot, but we do have a number of them. So either let's keep going with that, or let's find a wooden one that looks, you know, specific to the image that we want to create in town, which I think historic is fine, but let's just not be generic or historic about it. So if we do go with site furniture, let's put some more thought into that. And then I think on the visual clutter list, like painting the transformer boxes and adding signage kiosks and the painted crosswalk, that all kind of falls into the visual clutter. To me, I really advocate for a mixture of loose and site furnishings, thinking about, you know, what do we really need? What are the services we need? And not just kind of putting stuff out there to activate the open space if it's not really going to be used by people or useful, and particularly if it's going to neck down the sidewalks that are already too narrow. The things like the murals could be interesting. You know, the Browns mural is kind of interesting sort of, you know, picture of its time. If we do murals or public art, I think we want to think about being very welcoming with whatever the subject matter is and making it approachable, and again, site specific, you know, maybe it's designed by Manchester school kids or that kind of thing. So I think there are good ideas, and I strongly agree with the idea of discontinuing the granite memorial benches. I think we have a lot of those already. They're not comfortable, unfortunately. They're often not in a place where anybody really needs to sit. And I think we might want to think about how we incorporate names in spaces, because you get a lot of names and it can start to feel like you're kind of privatizing the space. And these are all people who are important to their loved ones, but the open spaces of Manchester are for everyone. And so I'm on board with a moratorium, kind of discontinuing the memorial benches and engraved names on things. Thank you. I think that's it.
Okay, anyone else? Mary?
I won't repeat. Well, thank you for the presentation. I won't repeat. I think I agree with it. It's a fine line with visual clutter. And that might not be the character of Manchester. I thought even some of the signage or the wayfinding, whatever it's called, looks very much like any town you're going to see. So hoping we could have some uniqueness to Manchester, some character that wouldn't be just like so many other towns around. Could you clarify, were you proposing your where you wanted the restroom was right on Beach Street at Masconomo Park? Was it at the front or was it in the back?
Like the stall located.
Yeah, it looked like you wanted it more on the sidewalk.
I believe at that location, the path kind of goes into the interior of Masconomo Park. So I think there's a sidewalk and a path, maybe, and so it would be in between, within the park. It wouldn't. I mean, this is something that you will need a landscape architect to cite. This is a dot on a map. It's not an exact location.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out the location, not any design details, but was it more towards the sidewalk or more towards the walk of that?
I think the goal in my mind would be to ensure that there are sight lines to the facility from downtown, from essentially the train tracks from that intersection. So you can see it, but I think you would want it, I would imagine you'd want it a little bit into the park. So it sits as kind of part of the park and not as like a way station right off the sidewalk.
Okay, yeah, it looked like the star was close to the sidewalk, so I think the ideal spot would be further back, kind of probably where the porta potties currently are, set back. So yeah, so again, the visual clutter. I was the one that had the comment that I was concerned that you put the planning board as part of a working group when we're not really part of a working group for this. And some of the data within the document, it relies on the UMass Donahue Institute population projections, and you make some brief recommendations around that. I would take all of that with a grain of salt. They're projecting that we're going to lose 1,500 residents in the next 20 years. So I think that's kind of a little far-fetched in my opinion. And what else? My concern with the restrooms, and I guess it's probably, well, both Masco and behind Town Hall, is that we would be building any structures in a floodplain. I think if we can utilize the Town Hall restrooms and, knowing how much it is to what was proposed at Reed Park for the restrooms, I think, to build a new structure would be maybe not the smartest idea, but so those are my comments.
Okay,
I just had one
Wait,
comment. I think maybe it was taken out of, I liked the idea of the chess table of the furniture. I liked gathering and, let's meet down and Reed Park and play chess. And my overall concern is maintenance. And behind Tuck's Point, I don't know if it's bocce or horseshoes, but you really can't tell what it is. So we have some great things, but we don't tend to take care of anything. So anything that needs immediate maintenance, I think should be really thought about twice in this town because we just don't do a good job at it.
One other thought, it's sort of in the same, I'm not sure we don't take care of anything, but I think we work hard to take care of a lot of things, but I do think the more things you have scattered around, the more difficult it is to maintain them. And so the kiosks, if you've been to college campuses, you see the kiosks that are kind of cluttered with things, and they are hard to maintain, and you need to have somebody who owns them. Really, really owns their, that maintains them and manages them, and for them to be, unless you want the, everything stapled on top of everything else, Lost Cat on top of, park concert in the park, which may be a look, it's a look that works for some places, but I think it's more of an urban look. And it also it doesn't help with wayfinding that for people who are not on pedestrians, not on foot. And I think most people right now are beginning to find out about events on their phones. So electronic, the effort might, there needs to be ownership of these things. And for example, the life jacket racks get things stapled to them, and I think Bion sometimes removes and sometimes doesn't. They get used as a kiosk right now, and I think they can tend to look messy. So
Yeah, I agree. Maybe I should have been more specific with the kiosk recommendation. The recommendation came out of two needs. Neither one of them was for community posting. One was to direct residents to restroom facilities and to businesses to assist with their orientation and wayfinding. And rather than having a multitude of individual signs throughout downtown, we thought if you had a signature kiosk that was unique to Manchester, it could draw people and have a map and orient people to space. So that would be one key element to have on it. And then the other is historical information about the town, which could be also a permanent fixture on a kiosk. We spoke with the Manchester Historical Museum, and they expressed concerns with how difficult it is to create historic signage. And they were advocating actually for, they do their historic home program, but they didn't want they weren't very excited to see a lot of interpretive signage about the history of the town throughout downtown, because that would have created more visual clutter. So the kiosk was a way to bring in a desire to celebrate your history and to orient folks. I think those would be the primary purposes more than creating a community message board.
great, thank you.
So can I ask what are the next steps of our funding comes from this? Does the town vote on it? So I'm just a little, where do we go from here?
You know where it's going. It's
Um,
going to the select.
I'm assuming it goes to the select board for funding. the town did apply for the wayfinding grant under the MDI program. So that would start in the fall if the funding comes through.
So this is something that if you receive the grant, the people in Manchester would just be like, hey, we got this money, we're doing it.
I was asked to write a grant for wayfinding.
I'm literally asking. a question.
So you can, I'm sure you can talk with the select board and Greg and say we don't need it. If that's your opinion.
It's not my opinion, I'm asking a question.
Please.
I don't know who makes the call, other than Greg and the select board.
But I mean, there's obviously a menu choice of items here. So
Right.
I don't think everything would be moving forward with any of it, so. Okay, thank you, Daniel. I think the board gave a lot of good ideas to you guys, and thanks for coming in.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. This is a pleasure working
Thank you,
with you.
Daniel.
Thank you.
And I hope to go up, make a visit this summer.
Great.
If you can find parking.
Or take the train.
It's only 2:40.
Yeah.
I'd like to suggest that that we make a action item to maybe a couple people get.
Hello.
You're downstairs to actually try to actually have a conversation with the select board about this, because I think that we have a real opportunity to knit together the downtown improvement work with the placemaking work and the historic character and the need for bathrooms, but I do worry that that they could become very disjointed efforts, and so I think as the planning board, we might, it seems like we've all spoken to that concern. So maybe we could just, a couple of us find a spot on one of the select boards meetings and just kind of get a better understanding where they're thinking, at least from my perspective, well, like get a sense of where they're thinking.
Would this be an agenda item for the select board at some point in this?
Yes.
Or maybe when they take it up, we could just be invited so that, and make sure we have one of us available to kind of convey. I think we've had pretty much quite similar concerns, and so.
Mary?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I think from what I heard tonight, the select board is, the downtown improvement reports up to the select board, and the civic space, the select board asked for a grant. So it sounds like the select board is managing both of these, so it would be up to them to make sure that they're not in silos and that there are coordinated project management. So I don't know who's doing that, but
Yeah. So
sounds like the select board is.
Okay, so will be an item on the select board at some future date.
I'm happy to just have a conversation with Anne with Greg, just to let her know that we talked, and then we'd like to, when they take this up, then bring us up.
Chuck said you need, when I was asking about the
Yeah.
starting point of, eliminating a parking space or not.
Right.
He also said he had further discussion.
Yeah.
So I'm happy
Chuck,
to
yeah.
check in with him.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, again. So I've asked Greg to come in to speak a little bit on what's happening with the land use director, town planner. And I'll let Greg explain where we stand.
Sure,
And
sure.
your thoughts.
So we've benefited greatly from Betsy's service over the last few months. Unfortunately, her time is restricted as a retiree. And the position, Betsy's recommendation is that we need a full-time planner. I think I've heard similar comments from the majority of you as well. So we have advertised for a full-time position. You have a copy of the job description, so if you have thoughts on what that description describes, it'd be helpful to hear your input. And going forward, in the past, when we hired our first planner, the chair was involved in that process in terms of interviewing and helping with the selection. We could do a similar process where you can give some input as to how you want to see that play out. So I'm looking for some feedback on the job description. You think it captures everything that is needed? And looking for your comments about sort of the qualities that you would like to see. Maybe hear that from everybody tonight, but if you have some thoughts, that's fine. If you want to send me an email with those qualities that you feel would be appropriate, that would be helpful as well. So that's where we're at. Timeline. Ideally, we would have someone on board by October. And that would allow a little bit of transition time with Betsy. I would love to convince Betsy to stay on to service the MBTA project in particular. And that's something she needs to work out with her other commitments and pressures in life. So we continue to have those discussions.
There's also the cell signaling that we expect to get an application in 6 weeks. Maybe
End of August, beginning of September.
September. So I'd like to have somebody, planner experience on board that we can help the
Help with the
process go.
process, sure.
Consultants and public hearing, what have you. So somebody new coming in, I guess there'd have to be some of Betsy's time.
There'd be some transition, I think.
And if we don't get somebody by, I mean, I know you're optimistic, but we would always have a town planner. I mean, is there gonna be a point where Betsy's no longer here and we have nobody selected yet? That would be
So-
an issue for us.
So that there's no guarantee that won't happen. We're going to try to prevent that as best we can. And if it came to where we needed to look for another interim, then that's something we would do if we have to.
Okay. Questions from the board on this? Chris?
Greg, have you had any feedback yet from any response from potential candidates at all?
Not yet. It just got published the first of the week.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's very good.
And have you got sort of an outreach program going to contact planning schools and like MIT and Harvard and?
So we've asked Betsy to help with that in terms of, the planner listserv that's available.
Yeah, listserv, yeah.
For planners in the state. And yeah, we'll start reaching out to different schools, as you say, graduate schools in particular. If you have ideas or thoughts on that, welcome to it, but we'll certainly get it published in MMA and APA and the listserv, et cetera.
Erin?
I had a general question and then some detailed questions on the job description. So when did we move from a town planner role to a director of land management town planner? Because director implies one that supervises, and so is this new role supervising others?
So the idea that is to have bring in the building inspector under the planning as well. So that's where that director role comes in. So that was the discussion that the select board had when we talked about different models.
So this person, so the building inspector would now report to the director of land management. Okay. And then some of the responsibilities from at least the 2014 job description seem to be gone, like it was removed reviewing of development proposals and applications for completeness. Who's now would do that role? So when an application comes into the planning board, it was the town planner role to review for completeness.
The plan would still be heavily involved with that.
Okay, so that was removed from the description. I was just wondering why. And then the a recommendation I would have is to have, and I didn't see it in here, I might have just didn't see it. Project management, project plan skills. I think that's very important. And number 7, it says applies for and administers, oh no, I'm sorry. Number 6, develops, conducts, and coordinates other plans and studies for the town, and I would add in conjunction with the planning board. I don't want to lose the responsibility that the planning board is the land use board in the town. I think that's important to keep that.
But there may be planning studies that aren't planning board related.
There may be, so I think you have to maybe have both scenarios in there. I think this appeared to me with the rewording of things to be moving towards the director of land management and kind of the planning board under that, and I just want to make sure that that's not your intent.
And there's not under the director, they are separate entities.
I understand that. I'm just saying, from this description, it doesn't make that as clear as it did in 2014. So I just want to make sure.
Where does it make it as clear?
When it says that, you know, they're off doing their own land use studies, that would not be in conjunction with the planning board. When it,
I don't think that was a change from the 2014 description.
it was added.
Right.
Was that? I think it was added. It was an added line. So I'm just, when, and it could just be a title. I don't know if it has to do with unions or if it's a, it becomes a different type of position in town. Just when I see director, it's a different type of position. That's all I'm saying.
Another comment?
Go ahead.
Sarah?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think we need a full-time planner. I think Betsy's done a great job, and it's no, absolutely no criticism of her. But I do think she works really hard, and it's hard to get everything done. So thank you for moving it forward, and we look forward to, I look forward to seeing some great candidates.
Could there be a land use planner part-time and a planner part-time? That possibility,
What do you mean by, what are you distinguishing? Yeah.
you know, have different roles, like a land use planner has a role that he or she can be responsible for, and then a planner can kind of split it. I'm just thinking if there's not
Right.
candidates, just some kind of scenario where we have somebody that we can go back to, especially during this critical signals, cell signaling.
Yeah, because I turned to Betsy's comment on that, whether you think 2 part-time positions might be an option.
I think that would be very difficult. Having been pretty much a sole planner for communities most of my life, or most of my professional career, there's a reliance on consultants, but pretty much you're, as a planner, the kind of chief cook and bottle washer. So I think it would be, if it were split so that you know, there was a very discrete task, it would be doable. But I think you'd want, you know, your planner in there for full-time. And I think it would be hard to kind of job share. I think you could hire somebody to, you know, help write a decision or work on a very specific task.
I'm just worried that just the way the job market is, I mean, I know in my business, we're having trouble finding anybody
It's a tough
right
market,
now.
there's no question.
You know, going across overseas. Laura?
Really glad to hear this is moving ahead. full-time job, I think was going to be more attractive to most candidates than a part-time job. Most people need to earn a living with a full-time level employment, so I hope that gets us good candidates. I really appreciate all Betsy has done for us, particularly some of the things that she's instituted that I'd love to see continued are, the preliminary drafting of the decision paper for us to comment on, so we're not gonna start it from scratch. The planner's memo that gives us, sort of high-level summary of, here are the issues, really has helped us, I think, become more efficient and sort of focus our discussions on, particularly when it's, kind of gives you the guardrails of here's what's in our jurisdiction and here are the things that we're being asked to look at. And so, try to focus your discussion this way. Those things have been really helpful. Betsy comes with a lot of experience. This is, I don't know whether the salaries can measure it with a full-time, how much experience someone will have. If they're coming right out of grad school, they may have some years of experience before. I think we've been lucky to have a very experienced person in the role for a while, so I'm kind of curious to see what we'll get. But I do think the experience is helpful in kind of organizing, we're an all volunteer board, and so many town boards are, most of, not all, I guess, our boards are all volunteer. And so having someone in a professional role really understands the professional discipline is valuable. I think we could certainly use the position full time. And if I'll just be interested to see if anyone comes with climate resiliency on their resume, being in a coastal town and the challenges that are ahead of us. That would be something that I'd be just interested to see if people are listing that on their CVs and what they're doing with it.
Christina.
I guess when it comes down to recommended minimum qualifications, I'm concerned about, or other related field. I feel that if we're hiring a town planner, we need to stick with the education and experience of a town planner. I do understand that this might be a difficult environment to find someone, but I don't want to choose someone and not have the right requirements just because we might be stuck. I mean, there's no mention of the EICP here. I'm not sure why that was a intentional oversight, but why not ask for someone that is a certified planner? The other thing is, I mean, Betsy went through this with Newburyport. I mean, the entire board there decided a new town planner. I don't understand why the entire board is not going to be involved with this process. Other towns employ that. I think we're the anomaly that don't. So I think the entire board should interview this person. If they're supporting us, I think we all should have input.
I'm going to have to do as a process. I would not do that with, yeah, there's an issue of confidentiality, at least for the first rounds. You will limit your applicant pool if you make everything a public meeting. Because people who are applying and they're not sure they're not a finalist, they may not want to let the world know that they're looking.
Well, I think the way that Newbury did it, it was the final two, correct?
I'm sorry?
Newbury did it in the final two, so I can see that point, but when there's a decision between a few, I think the entire board should be involved.
So
I'm just not sure that's an efficient way to proceed, and it kind of, to me, I mean, I have not been involved in the town government for very long, but that just seems a little bit out of how the town usually hires employees. My other point, since we started to discuss some of the specifics, in number 4, when you're talking about the zoning bylaws, I would love for you to include something about a skill that I think Betsy has done very well, and that is interfacing with legal counsel, which is a big part of getting our zoning bylaws to the finish line and having them be correct. So I'd love to see, I don't know how you want to word that, or maybe that's an interview question, but just the ability to easily work with legal counsel and fluency with the legal issues regarding zoning. And then the other specific skill suggestion I have is technical expertise with the online tools that the planners have to use. I think Betsy is skilled in this too, but there will only be more of them. And they just need to be facile with them and efficient with them. So I don't know how you want to structure that either, and maybe that's an interview question, but I think that's important.
I just wanted to sort of counter Christine's suggestion of just limited to perhaps to planning, because right now there are lots of academic experiences, I think, or that particularly coupled with work experience that we want to be open to. You know, somebody might be a landscape architect or an engineer. My sister's been a career planner and she has a degree in geography. So I think there's a range of skills that's not always called planner in an academic situation. So I would encourage you to keep it broad and see who we get, and we want their experience and continuing education and other kinds of professional experience or lived experience or experience serving on a planning board or whatever can make someone uniquely qualified. I would not limit it to a particular degree or something.
Betsy.
Yes, I have a comment about AICP. So you'll notice when you got my resume, I don't have AICP. I had an AICP designation for 7 or 8 years, and I didn't see any benefit, so I let it lapse. Anybody in this position is gonna do education. So I don't think it's mandatory. It might be beneficial, but all it tells somebody is that you can take a test, you can pass a test, you can pay your $700 or $900 a year for the benefit of AICP certification.
I
So-
think that we were in the past in a situation that we had someone in the role that wasn't qualified. So whatever we can do to ensure, if we're gonna create our own questions that they need to answer to our satisfaction, that's my point, that we need to be involved. So Susan, I mean, people, citizens have sat down, the fire chief, the police chief. So there are opportunities for residents and to participate and listen to and choose these positions. I think we're unique that we're not choosing our position. We are, the select board chooses you, Greg, and we in turn as elected people feel that we should be choosing this person that supports us. If the role is to support us as elected officials, I think we should have this voice as a board. So thank you for that, and I can appreciate that designation. I get that, but I do think that we need to make sure if we're hiring someone, this board feels that they have the skills to support us in all these different ways, legal, sustainability, and we should be the ones having input. We all have different angles, and we all should be able to give that input.
You want to make a motion?
Can I just add something?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. When I interviewed as the first town planner in Winchester, it was a fairly lengthy process, but what they did initially is all the boards and commissions that I would be staffing, there was a representative from each. And there were probably 8 or 10 people. You were in the hot seat and they interviewed you. And that was an hour and a half interview. Then as it narrowed down, there were discussions with the town manager, who was the appointing authority, but there was always 1 or 2 planning board members. So it wasn't a quorum, and that those 1 or 2 or 3 people weren't making a decision, but they were getting a sense. And then
Public meeting.
it was not a public meeting because it was, they weren't making a decision and it wasn't a majority of the planning board. And then the last meeting was with the entire board. And that was, as I recall, it was a public meeting.
We can't use executive session for interviews.
You can for preliminary. You cannot for finals.
But you as the,
As the appointing authority, I can have advisors,
Yeah,
as many advisors as I want to have help.
as long as you have a quorum.
As long as I don't have a quorum of
Yeah.
any particular board.
but as the person who was being interviewed, not only people got a sense of me, but I got a sense of the boards
Right.
that I was gonna
Yeah.
be supporting.
How is the select board handling this? Are they involved in the interview process?
No, they haven't, typically, they would not.
Laura?
Just a couple more thoughts on for the professional designation, AICP is a good one. You can take an AICP exam if you're an architect, a planner, a landscape architect. You can have all kinds of disciplines and study and take the exam and pass it. Whatever credentials they come from, I think is informative to you as you're looking at the resume. So it may be AIA or AICP, but that does tell us something about their training. And I wouldn't say it's mandatory, but it tells us something about their training and their certifications or licensure, which is a factor. One skill that yeah, it'll be on the resume. I don't think you have to go poking too much further than that, really, you'll see it. One thing that I didn't mention, I don't know if this is really germane to the planner position, but it would certainly be useful, is some kind of graphic presentation skills. And it might depend on which kind of angle the person is coming from, but we have talked a lot about wanting to communicate with a little more ease to the, to some of these complex issues and boil them down or present them in a way. We don't have consultant dollars to do that on a regular basis, but if the planner could help us, I think that would be a great service, because she would, even if we have a, kind of communications person and Tiffany or others, I think the person having the technical knowledge who's making the presentation, that's a benefit to us, to trying to tell a story that's maybe a difficult story to tell, and we're trying to communicate in a clear way. So that, and I don't know if that's extra on top of the bread and butter, extra jam, but it would be great if they had it, if they had any kind of portfolio like that. As far as the interview, I think that we're all kind of rotating through these positions. We change over time. This person's going to report to you. And so I think that you should be the one to select the person and make sure that it's a good mutual fit for you. And if you want to bring the person in as a courtesy and meet with some combination of the boards or the planning board, whoever it is at the last round, I think that's fine too. But I don't feel a need to be involved in the hiring decision.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask that Greg and maybe Ron work out a process that does sort of something along the lines that Betsy has suggested. Think a little bit about Christina's comment about, wanting to maybe a final presentation in front of the board, but and the benefit of having the board members meet with him or her before the final is, I think we learn something too. It's an opportunity for us to hear how Duxbury did something, or Ipswich did something, or Concord did something, or and so that we get an opportunity, or at least some of us, to hear, even if it's not a finalist, from their experience about how they handled something that might be useful to us as we proceed. So maybe the two of you could figure out an appropriate. You're just in the first phase, your second phase, you wrote the job description, you posted it, and as you get the candidates in, sort of come up with a proposal, a process that makes sense to you as the hiring manager, but that does give, to Betsy's point, give a candidate, the finalists anyway, or the semi-finalists, opportunities to see who they're working with and what we think the issues are. That's just my suggestion.
So I guess back to this, Greg and I and Chris and Mary, when we were doing the rules and regulations before policies and procedures, we talked about an MOU and there was going to be clear delineation responsibilities that the planner would report to the planning board, but then there was administrative details and responsibilities that Greg would be handling. So to me, at this point, I mean, if we're going to follow through with something on that level, then we should be involved with choosing the person that this divided MOU is going to be, you know, pertaining to. So I don't see why we wouldn't choose it if we're gonna have this kind of a structure.
Is that in the MOU that was sent?
Is there an MIU?
Is there what?
Was that in that draft MOU?
What was special like?
That the town planner report to the.
Yeah, there was gonna be a dual, there was, so since we are an elected board, we should have some autonomy through the town planner, but I'm not sure how this works with a director of land management. It kind of changes a bit. So I'm curious what you think this should look like now, the MOU.
Well, which we need to have a decision about whether or not the planning board feels like there needs to be an MOU. And no, I don't think it changes. It's a direct, what the town planning is. That doesn't change the nature of what potentially be created.
So, two ways to proceed. I'll take a motion, maybe to do a.
I
resolve
recommend,
this.
why don't we wait and see if we get some candidates before we say. I mean, you sound like you're gonna get 20 candidates for this.
Well, that's
You
what I'm
will,
worried
but
about.
then
I'm worried
one-
about
one-
the-
hopefully one will be
Have no town
qualified.
planner.
They're not gonna be
We're have
20
to
candidates.
Fumble our way through the cell signal.
We'll be really lucky if we get 3. But let's see if we even get 3 before we worry about this.
All right.
MOU making.
So as for, I mean, until we have some other agreement, maybe, and I don't even know if we are authorized to do it, but the planner, or director of land management reports to Greg.
Yeah.
Unless there's some other. Has that been changed in any?
No.
And I guess, to me, it makes sense. We are not equipped to manage personnel as a volunteer board. I do think that the planner obviously works closely with the planning board and, you know, perhaps it would be helpful to have a more formal set of responsibilities that we do once a year and you know, the chair having some input into a review, an annual review or something like that. But it seems to me that we're ill-equipped to manage staff.
I don't think the point was to manage staff, was to manage what we need from staff. So
Why don't
Greg
we-
can,
Why don't we pull out that MOU and take a
At
look
least
at
take a
it?
stab at it.
Yeah, I just, well,
Is it in the SharePoint?
No,
Can I just say it's 9 o'clock? This is getting a little bit. Could we move on? Greg's got
Maybe we
to
can
go.
discuss it at the next meeting by putting it in a place where we can all see it.
Yeah,
As a draft.
or turn to Betsy's
Yeah.
extensive experience about how relationship between the planner and the planning board has worked in her other communities. I think those are very instructive and can be helpful.
Yeah, and writing it down would be great.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. Before you leave on the next topic that's on the agenda, I'm gonna talk a little bit about, hopefully briefly on any bylaws we made. Is there gonna be a town meeting in the fall?
That's not set in stone, but the general anticipation is that there would be.
And
So I think if you have some topics that you want to bring up, that would help make the decision of whether or not to have a fall town meeting.
okay, that's, I was gonna talk about it with the board tonight about whether we just want to take a break and not put anything forward, and we have 4 or 5 things that we already have in queue. But if we did have a fall town meeting, I mean, just for timeline wise, are you talking November?
Yeah, really don't know.
So that would give us, how much time we have. to get something. That, public hearing and all the things you gotta back up into. And it might be too late now, I don't know. To even propose anything, but, okay, thank you, I just wanted to make sure that, and, that brings us to the next.
So I guess just one more comment on it. If I would rather have a couple 3 items for the fall and maybe a couple 3 on the spring, rather than 6
No, we
or
don't.
so at the annual.
Yeah.
So,
No, I don't think we're gonna be,
So,
well,
I don't know what-
I'm speaking for the board, but I don't think we're gonna be. I think this process of slow, to the town has been working pretty well, so, we're not gonna inundate with 6.
but that's it. Good.
No.
I'm glad you
We
had that.
have
That's-
we have other major things we're involved with right now,
Sure.
so.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to bring up the next, I just want to give a shout out to Chris and Sarah for their expertise at the town meeting on writing and posting and changing for Article 12. I thought you did a bang up job. We got 80% approval, over 80%. So I think the recodification effort is pretty much done. And so now we're going into more bylaw type changes. I know there's some Scrivener errors that we may still need to correct, but just want to give them a shout out on that. So I'd just like to discuss, we had some things in queue, non-conforming use, residential conservation clusters, senior housing, ADUs, floodplain bylaw. Those are some of the things we had talked about, and we have some of that stuff written. Do we want to pursue any of these things for the fall or just take a break? And I'll just give that up to discussion for the group. And my feeling is, especially on anything that changes density in town, that we kind of wait till we see where this MBTA thing goes. But that's my feeling on that. But on the others, up for discussion. Anyone want to make a comment on going forward or not going forward, Mary?
I agree with you, Ron. I think that makes good planning sense that, bringing up density bylaws now is not prudent. The one bylaw I would push for that I pushed for prior and was talking to a water resource task force, whatever the name of this person, is the aquifer overlay district protecting our water supplies. I think that and a floodplain bylaw should carry us for the next file. And with that said, with any potential housing bylaws, and this will fall into another topic as well, but we have been asking for months and months and months for data for how many multifamily units are in the general district, what's the lot sizes, the density there. We have had a full-time town planner we had one for 8.5 years, and we don't have the most basic data for planning, right? We should know how many housing units are in each district. Are they multifamily? Are they ADUs? Are they single family? Are they conforming? Are they non-conforming? Is there wetlands? Is there, all of this stuff. And I don't know that we can do our job and continue to propose things when we don't know the basic data. So I'm hoping Betsy will say that stuff is posted on the website. I haven't seen it yet. I know at a meeting a month ago, you said we would have it by the end of that week.
It's not been posted on the website because there's been delays in getting things posted on the website. We do have some of that information, but some of that information like non-conformity cannot be determined without going out and taking a look at it, looking at a particular building.
So
And
can we get the data that you have?
well, there was two issues. One was that The assessor's office deals with mixed use buildings differently, so we have to go back and do some corrections. Secondly, as far as I know, the assessor's office does not track ADUs.
No, and we
And
have heard that throughout the
there have been
years.
repeated
and so-
requests for that.
Yeah, and we haven't seen any change process in, you know, how the town is handling it. So I think it goes down a black hole and we're never heard from again. But I would think that, you know, with all the consultants and everything else, like the water task force, MBTA task force, not the water task force, the MBTA task force, the planning board. I mean, we need basic data and we don't have, so I am asking for that again.
Susan.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I feel like that is a whole nother topic, and maybe we could put it as an agenda item for our next meeting.
Me forwarding the information that was supposed to be forwarded a month ago.
Yes, the whole topic.
So I guess I'm just gonna request that you could send me what you have so far.
I think we should talk about it at our next meeting.
We've been talking about it for 3 months, Susan.
Right, let's,
You know, I agree with, I have a lot to say on the data piece too, and I think we should take it up next
let's
time.
table the data
Yeah.
piece. Hopefully you'll get something up, whatever you can recently. How about, let's go to the main topic here. Do we want to engage on any bylaw changes for the fall?
So I'd like to propose one bylaw change, which would be to allow senior housing by special permit in this town. It doesn't require data analysis because we don't really have any senior housing in this town. That's the answer. Every other city and town allows senior housing with a special permit. Why we don't with the oldest population base on the North Shore is crazy. We should just do it. We have it drafted. We can do it easily. Propose it to town meeting. If they turn it down, so be it. We should at least propose it.
I'm gonna echo Chris's proposal for senior housing. I think we have done a good job of doing the administrative stuff. And we've heard a lot of conflicting opinions about the policy issues, which, you know, is that, you know, ADUs, residential clusters, senior housing. But we don't know what the town actually feels. So, and the only way you know is to bring it to a vote. And so I think that one is consistent with the master plan. And I would propose that we have a subcommittee again, and that has a couple of meetings, one before Labor Day, to map out some high-level goals, and that we then have a meeting early September to sort of vote on those goals, and then secondly, to give those goals and our existing draft to the lawyer to figure out how to bring those together and any changes in the existing draft, you know, which districts maybe or whatever. So it's sort of a goal statement, start with that. But I think we've done a lot of work on it. We've heard from a lot of people that it's that they're for it, and we've heard from people that they are against it. So I think the only way you know is to bring it to a vote. I also think looking at the aquifer and the floodplain are great, and we should be moving forward with those. But I think for November, senior housing is achievable. The other one is, I think we can change the ADU language. What is it, section?
Non-conforming use.
Employees, expand employee to family member, which is what everybody's doing for that provision where the zoning board of appeals grants a special permit for that use. That just simply change employee for the purposes of employees to employee or family member. It's easy to understand. It's consistent with what is already going forward, and we have no idea if the town agrees. And I think if the town doesn't agree with that, then that's a message to the zoning board to think more carefully about that provision, which is how they are essentially granting AUs right now. So those would be my two proposals, and I'm willing to serve on the subcommittee and to schedule a meeting before September 1st to see if this is realistic for this topic or these two topics. I'll make a motion that we form a subcommittee to do senior housing, or maybe anybody else wants to add on.
Any
to
other
it.
comments on, before we move forward on any of these?
I've suggested a subcommittee that also includes the building inspector.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I think the aquifer bylaw and the floodplain are good. I just don't think we have time
The
to.
plan will be ready in the spring because we'll have revised maps by then.
Yeah, I think the floodplain should be better in the spring because the maps will be in.
Oh, yes, I wasn't saying for November. I think both of those will take a long time to be done well. And yeah, that's what
I
I
agree.
was.
Any other comments on that? So, I don't know, I'll take a vote to move the senior housing by special permit bylaw forward for fall town meeting and form a subcommittee of 2 or 3 and the building inspector and the town planner.
We'll post any meetings, so.
Second,
So that's seconded. Any
The
discussion?
subcommittee is of Sarah and Chris and anybody else? Mary,
I'll be on.
okay, Mary, Chris, and Sarah.
Any discussion?
I'm gonna vote no, but I'll be on.
Hopefully we can get, hopefully we can get to.
No, I don't think you should be out if you're voting
Absolutely.
no.
No, we have to diverse the pool that has been working on these bylaws.
Well, then vote
today.
for it then.
Why don't
I
we try to,
don't-
why
I
don't we
don't
make a
agree
goal
with
of
it.
trying to have a unanimous vote for it? How's that?
Because I just said I don't agree with bylaws that is going to increase density, and I definitely don't agree with bylaws that for commercial
Okay, well,
use
let's-
in residential, so that,
Commercial- that is,
excuse me, Chris, could you say that out loud again?
yes, that is ridiculous argument.
Why?
There's no commercial use of a senior residential facility.
you guys can talk about this in your subcommittee.
Okay.
So, the motion's been made and seconded, and any further discussion? Okay, I'll take a roll call. Ms. Filbert,
Yes,
Ms. Kenny,
Yes.
Mr. Olney.
Yes,
Yes.
Delicio,
Yes.
Ms. Holden,
No,
and the chair votes yes. So it's 6-1, and that's what we'll be bringing forward.
Let's move to see if we can bring it forward and get some agreement. So,
Thank
the
you.
next step, thank you.
So maybe there'll be a special, I mean, you're not gonna have.
You'll
one
be ready even if you
that's
don't have a special.
on there, right? Is there- Okay. All right, thanks, Greg. Thank you. We'll get comments to you. I think you've gotten enough tonight already, but
And if you have additional ones, feel free.
Okay,
It's helpful.
thank you.
thank you.
so just to kind of finish up here, cell signaling technologies update, Betsy,
We
pre-application.
had
meeting.
a pre-application staff meeting, which included several planning board members and several board members from other boards. Generally, the feedback I got was that it was very helpful to kind of keep the dialogue going, and it was pretty helpful to find out certain technical things about the project. I think probably a recommendation will be made by me to hire an outside consultant for stormwater and traffic and potentially geothermal.
Other consultants that, Mary.
I would add to that, and I believe that it's in the site plan now, that we get an independent consultant for the fiscal analysis. They said they were gonna provide something, but I think we need our own.
Well, maybe we'd ask excuse me.
Are you gonna give us a list of consultants, or you're just gonna tell us who the? consultants
I'm working on a list.
Might be good to ask the FinCom for input on the fiscal analysis.
are? Who's our FinCom rep?
Mary. Sorry, Mary.
Take care of that.
Came out, sorry.
Okay,
I'm not sure what we're gonna look at for geothermal, but maybe the stormwater person could. We can talk about that. I'm not,
Yeah.
yeah, it's sort of a. So we can, think about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
all right, thank you, Betsy. MBTA Communities, Section 3A, update on last week's meeting. Any updates for the board?
So we did two things. First, we talked about a schedule for how the board is going to proceed with various tasks. And the second thing is we adopted a mission statement, which I believe is posted on the website now, so. Next meeting is
August 17th.
17th of August. We also talked about a little bit about zoning and what zoning is and the role zoning plays in.
Really, maybe you need to meet more often at this point,
We're
or?
gonna meet
Meet
once,
twice a month.
we're gonna meet
after-
twice a month starting in September.
Okay.
There's no point trying to get people to meet more than once in August.
No, I hear you.
And on Wednesday night, Ian Harrison is doing a mapping
Oh, yeah, I should.
Oh, I
exercise.
saw that posted. It's a public meeting.
Yes,
Okay, maybe-
5:30, I think.
5:30 here.
You want want to know how to do maps?
Yes.
Please attend. Okay, anything else on MBTA community?
I would actually just like to make a comment for the record. I did listen to the meeting and as an elected person, this board's in charge of zoning. Some of the comments made by the board members were very concerning. They didn't know the distance between, was it a half a mile or a mile and a half? Another comment was stating that the heater District D was an overlay district, so the technical acuteness of this board is very concerning, so.
Those were not planning board members that made those comments. They're.
I understand, Susan, I'm not finished,
Okay.
and this board is recommending zoning, and this MBTA task force does not have a grasp of zoning, so any suggestions, recommendations that comes out of this board based on the meeting that I listened to last week, I am very concerned that we have delegated this duty to people that have not read the law, don't understand the law, and don't understand the basics of zoning. I would like that on the record and the minutes. Thank you.
I'd like for the record to say thank you for your comment.
See what they produce. I did send a PowerPoint that the state that I thought you may want to distribute to your board.
Mhm,
So
thank you.
That's some basic things. Okay, thank you. Just on liaison task force working group updates, the Coastal Zone Management Steering Committee.
Yeah, that's
anything
not the
more?
name of that committee. I think it's the Coastal Action Plan. But that work has closed out. The final, yeah, as I updated last time, the consultant made the final presentation.
No?
We
Yeah.
commented, and it will be, I think it's at Greg's hand now.
Okay, harbor
There's
management,
a website for it, so it should all be on there.
harbor management plan, Sarah, any?
The meeting was postponed and hasn't been yet rescheduled.
FEMA map floodplain, this is gonna be, you're gonna provide a template. Okay. Water Resource Task Force, we met on the 19th. I sent you the draft minutes in your meeting packet in case, anyone was interested, but the main thing out of it was the proposed decision to adopt new water rates. By the Cape was deferred by the select board to September timeframe. In the meantime, the standard 2.5% increase of water rates was approved until the new rate tiers can be further communicated. On the CPC, we met on June 29th. We closed out completed projects and dormant accounts. And on other meetings, on June 27th, there was a governance meeting. I sent you the PowerPoint slides in your meeting packet. Tables were arranged by boards and committee that work closely with each other. I sat with Ann Harrison, John Round, Chuck Dam, Nate DeRozes, and Sarah Melish. We looked at projects where we may intersect. They want to improve communications, create a liaison program and improve that. Well, we're ahead of the curve there. We've already done that. And improve the town website. Those were some of the things. And then they want to have annual multi-board meetings to have goal sharing. So I will keep you informed on anything moving forward with that. Gail's not here, but she did post meeting minutes from June 6th and June 12th. Anybody have do I hear a motion and to approve?
Second.
Any changes to the minutes? Approve as written. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, hands. Okay.
I have a question on minutes. So we had a subcommittee for the zoning with Jonathan. I don't think we have minutes for that. I think you were there. Betsy, Mary was there, Ron and I were there. I can work with you to draft those. And then there was a subcommittee. Anyway, I believe it was May 15th, but there were also the rules and regulations subcommittee met, have those had meetings minutes? Yeah. Yeah, they were published. Are they in our packet? Have they been in our packet? We voted on them like a month ago. Okay. No, the rules and regulations subcommittee, they're in our packet. They were, we all did. Well, we wouldn't have voted. Anyway, if you could just send, they're posted. Okay, can you just send, when you send me an email with where those are?
Versus finding them on the website?
Just what the dates were, so I can look them up. That'd be great. Thank you.
So I have this one, so our next meeting is scheduled for August 14th. Traditionally, try to meet only once in August. My suggestion is that we meet next on August 28th. Our agendas would be pretty light now. So I'm thinking of canceling the August 14th meeting. I know Sarah and Betsy won't be there in any case, so had a tough time. We had a tough time, as you know, last meeting, we didn't get a quorum. So any objections to cancel?
Not an objection, but just a comment, if there is, the August 28th is closer to Labor Day weekend, so that might be more. I might miss that one, I'm not sure yet, but it's closer to a holiday weekend, so.
Yeah.
If there's no, well, sure, why not, but I would vote for canceling the 28th, but I don't know who else is gonna be
Well, I
here
have
or not
nothing to
there.
do on the board. They have nothing. Right now, I can't.
You don't have anything
nothing.
for the 14th?
I don't have anything.
Well, just the discussion that we wanted to move to the next meeting, that we were just.
The data.
On the data.
On the data, we can discuss that, but Betsy won't be here, so.
Oh, I actually
We
might.
might have the
be there.
data by
will be.
then.
Yeah,
Oh, so we can maybe cancel the 28th and keep the 14th.
That would be my.
I will entertain that.
Yeah, because I think if we want to start with these,
Yeah, so you'll be here for the data.
yeah, I think so.
So the meeting will be on the data, should be pretty short. That's all I have for now. So any objection to, well, we can talk about the 28th on the 14th. Yeah, think of any other comment, any other matters? Take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All those in favor? See you on the 14th.
I might have to come in by then, but.